Oh, wait, okay, I think the microphone was off, so there we go. It does, trying to test a little bit of sound here. So we're a few minutes early. And I think that it's happening. I'm pretty positive, but let me make some corrections here. Get my sound set up. And I think that it's happening. I'm pretty positive, but let me make some corrections here. Okay, and I can hear myself in the thing, so I think that we're good. Like I said before, if anybody hears any sound and they don't hear sound, my sound set up, and I think that then let me know. All right, I'm gonna get my questions up too. I know I went through some of these questions before, so maybe one or two of them will end up being a repeat. I'll try to pick ones that I know for sure we didn't do, because I'm seeing a high harp and wood harp here one, and I feel like that question was asked last time. Kind of feel like that question was asked already. Yeah, anyone, it says that there's more stream viewers. I don't know if that's true or not, but if you're in the stream and you can hear me, you feel free to give a shout and say you can hear me or some shit. Just let me know what's going on. Yeah, then we should be starting officially here in just a second or two. I said one, so I mean I want to give like a brief minute for people to show up, but then we can dive into the questions and stuff when it hits about one. Yeah, who knew that YouTube streaming would be so confusing for someone over the age of 30? I never could have guessed. All right, yeah, no, that looks like I think we're all ready to go. We'll just kill some really brief time here by scrolling through my questions and finding a good one to start with here. Don't want to pick anything too juicy. Oh, my cat just walked up. Hey, kitty. We'll start at the very bottom of the list with this weird question of how many Barristons does it take to carve a cake? So if you're in the chat and you can hear me, like I said, let me know and just confirm, make sure that I'm heard. If you're not hearing anything, yell, you know. But yeah, so first question, our demo question, our test question today. And we may have guests, we may not. I honestly don't know. A lot of people in the Nerd Club where I do the stream from, we're not there today, so kind of unfortunate. Captain Time, I know, is off doing something, although I think he is following the stream because I see him. He said panic, so, you know. Hey, we got Blood in the chat. What's going on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Blood? Am I audible? Am I able to be heard? Is that a thing that's happening? Let me know in the chat if I can be heard. Actually, I should probably type that into the chat and be like, can you guys hear me? Okay, blood says I'm good. All right, okay. I'm gonna trust you. I'm trusting you, Yuli. That you're my trusted source on the audio equipment for today. So the first random question that were our demo question here. Yeah. So before I get too sidetracked, how many Barristons does it take to carve a cake? And I think the answer to that question would be very similar to the question of who would win in a sword fight between Barristan and Arthur Dayne. And it comes down to who's wielding Valyrian steel. So I have to say that I think with any Valyrian steel weapon, I don't think there's a cake that could stand up to Sir Barristan. Pretty sure that he would destroy any cake with a Valyrian steel sword. Now, if he just had a regular long sword, you know, I don't know. I mean, maybe we'd have to double up, get like one Barristan to kind of orchestrate the cutting process, and then one Barristan to actually do the cuts. You know, that'd be my answer to that little demo question of how many Barristans does it take to carve a cake. And we got about 4 minutes till the official start time here, but it's telling me that there are a couple of people. It keeps fluctuating. It'll be like 2, and then it's like 8, and so like I don't know how many of you there actually are there, but but we're just going to dive in and we're going to start a little bit early. So if you missed all the beginning bullshit that I was just going through, trying to demo the sound checks and all that sort of crap, and asking the questions if I could even be heard, because I'm not good at streaming, we're here to answer submitted Q&A questions that I made a post for a while back. So they're all over the place. Could be anything. And there may be guests joining us. I'm not positive. There were a lot of guests last time. There's a huge amount of guests last time, and then today I don't know if anyone's free. So we'll be if random guests pop in, then we'll welcome them, and if not, then we'll just go through these questions, and then I'll answer whatever you guys want to ask me in the chat. Okay, Yuli actually had a question really quick here. So talking of Valyrian swords, is it weird we only hear of 2 adventurers to Valyria and beyond Euron? We don't know if anyone else's adventures in details. I kind of imagine that like people probably more locally to Valyria we're going back and trying to get in there. Like, I think if you went to Essos, you'd hear of a lot more people that attempted to go into Valyria and attempted to figure out if they could, go through the lands and the Smoking Sea and all that sort of stuff. Because Valyria is like, it's accessible from quite a few directions if you're actually like in the continent of Essos. So my guess is that Asasi scholars, Asasi adventurers, Asasi texts probably contain a lot more information, about that. Like if we were trying to think of it as like a real world kind of thing. Whereas in Westeros, I don't know if it's all that whack that we only hear about the adventures of 1 or 2 people, because a lot of people are not literate. Texts aren't very common. At least like not in common circulation, because the literate population is just so low. So it wouldn't surprise me if especially maybe there might even have been oral accounts that were brought over from, Essos, but maybe they didn't get written down or something like that. Or there's people who absolutely adventured there, but they were illiterate and didn't write down their accounts. So I think that if you're trying to kind of look at like a real world thing, like, no, I don't think it's that weird that in Westeros, at least, that we don't hear of too many people going to Valyria. But I think if you went to Essos, that you would encounter a lot more people who had either had oral tradition or literal actual texts about expeditions to Valyria. Hey, afternoon, Charles, how's it going? I hope I'm saying that. Charles, on my glasses on, so maybe it's Charles, but I'm just fucking like basically blind. So, yeah, let's jump in and we'll start answering the questions from the list here. And then, like I said, if we run out of time or run out of these questions, I'll just answer your guys' questions from the chat. And we can just have a chat session. So one of the questions here that actually appeared more than once was, what's up with Jon's random bouts of super strength? Do you think he's supernatural, or is it adrenaline? And if it's super strength, is it a skin-changing thing, or do we see any other kind of skin-changing stuff with similar bouts of strength? I kind of am leaning towards the skin-changing thing. Gosh, my timer's going off. Tell me it's time to start the stream. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning more towards the skin-changing thing. I think that he has some experiences with Ghost just prior to fighting Iron Emmett, and that's one that people always talk about. They're like, Jon hulked out and beat up Iron Emmett. What's up with that? Or that's proof that Jon's a real total badass. Which I don't know that it's proof that Jon's like better fighter than Emmett. I think they're in the books, they're supposed to be pretty on par, which makes it kind of a weird event that no one really like. Even Jon's like, whoa, what the fuck happened there? Like, why did I beast out all of a sudden? And I think it has to do with the connections to the warging and to skin changing in general. So that would be my main thought. Jon is taking roids. I think he's taking supernatural roids, more or less. I think that, I mean, and you could also get into the idea that it's wolf's blood, that but I think that wolf's blood is like a metaphor for the warging gene, you know what I mean? So it could be just something that is inherent to all wargs, or it could be kind of a more Stark specific thing. But one way or another, I do think it has to do with his bloodlines. So my answer to that question, my best answer would be that, yeah, he's experiencing mental and genetic stuff that are causing him to have reactions that sometimes manifest themselves in Hulk out episodes or blackout episodes or stuff like that. The question of, do we see other people doing that? Yeah, I think we do. We see Dany. So Dany, as she starts to become more what appears to be like warging, telepathic, dragon riding receptive, she stops feeling the pain of the saddle, and she stops feeling the pain of the weird sex that she's having with Drogo before she kind of starts to take dominance in their sex life and stuff. And I think we're actually seeing something kind of similar, that as the warging powers awaken, the mental powers can kind of dim some of the real world forces. Like, so if she's riding the saddle all fucking day and it's killing her, does not have experience in living the saddle life like the Dothraki do. She's getting stronger as a person just naturally, because of the writing, but I think she's also awakening the warging stuff. And my guess is that Jon and her are sharing a parallel there. Yeah, when he's more, so chat says, Ratty Saddy said, when he's enraged, he is more animalistic and more ghost in that given time. And yeah, that's that connection. Like there was a great Jesse Bear Book Club video, and I think Hills Alive had a video on this topic too. That it was also more about the show and more about that particular incident where Aemon ate Jace's dragon. But it's about how the dragons are a two-way conduit. This idea that it's a two-way conduit, that the animals are giving you emotions and you're giving the animals emotions. And Varamir Sixskins basically confirms all of this when he talks about his experience with his master. So he'll speak about, God, I'm forgetting his master's name now, but he'll speak about this guy, and he talks about how this guy was inherently afraid of his powers, and so he didn't manifest himself fully. And so there it does seem to be like, there's that whole element going on of the same thing is happening with all of our warging characters, that it's not like that they're not having unique individual reactions to warging entirely, like they're having a unique expression, but they're also having a collective expression of, this is what it's like for warging influence on you, or this is how warging influence expresses itself. So yeah, without beating that question into a dead horse too much, I would say that that's more or less what's going on there. There's a strong chance, at least, that it's related to his skin changing. So, other one here, let's see here. So, why was Tyrion reading about Valyrian siege engines at the Winterfell Library during a time of peace? Interesting question. I think the implication is that he's anticipating upcoming war and stuff. But I'd like to add a weird little tinfoil thingy there. So, Tyrion loves to read about dragons, right? I had this video where I talked about why the Valyrians would have actually had a hard time fighting wars against old geese, or old gis, I haven't pronounced it, but I put forth the hypostulate that that the Giscari probably knew how to construct primitive anti-dragon weaponry, like very very low quality by our modern standards anti-aircraft weapons, like the ones the Dornish used to take down the dragon in the Wars of Dorne. And so I think that what Tyrion might be reading about is like that technology, that flow of technology back and forth between like old geese and Valyria probably was happening a lot. And so Valyrian siege equipment is probably not solely derived from Valyrian technology. It's probably derived from the Wars of Geese. And it would be my guess that in the books Tyrion's reading, he's trying to read about dragons, trying to know about the old wars. He has this interest in history and warfare specifically. And so why is he reading about Valyrian siege equipment? It's probably, related to everything else he's reading about. And that's probably because it's all linked together back to those old wars. If I were to put some little tin spin on it, my guess is that Valyrian siege weaponry is derivative of Giscari siege weaponry, which was amplified in order to fight dragons, and things like the ballistae and the crossbows that are huge, and all these, there was a weapon that was sent for in Lys or Tyrosh or something like that, a dragon-killing weapon that they were afraid of when they were invading Dorne. The Targaryens were like, we've heard that they sent for this dragon-killing weapon. And my guess is that's all together. That's all probably one strain of connection. So Tyrion, if he's reading about dragon warfare, he's reading about the way dragons were ridden, he's probably reading about how dragons were killed. And that would involve siegecraft, in my opinion. That would be directly connected to what we consider to be ancient siege weapons. So I would say that I don't know that it's indicative of him thinking about a future war, but I think it's either Martin tying us into how dragons die and that connection to the Dornish wars and the Giscari wars against dragons, or he's connecting Valyria to technology, like the technology of siegecraft and equipment, things that were like. Because like siegecraft wasn't like lost, like in feudal Europe, but there was times in which technology, was, these people would be like, well, comparative to the Roman Empire, technology has dropped off, and so I think that humanity goes through a series of times in which we, from ancient warfare to medieval warfare, which we kind of uncover and refine and rediscover siegecraft. And there's probably like a bit of thread going on there too. Martin loves that real world thread connection to ancient documents. So best guesses, that's what I would say. Something along those lines. So another question here. This is why did Eddard get so mad when Catelyn brought her up? Why did Eddard say never ask about Jon? And I'm guessing someone can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong here, but her is Ashara Dayne. Catelyn says, she's like, oh, I was gonna ask. I went to ask Ned about this lady, this Dornish woman, and then he basically is like, don't ever talk about that. Don't ask me about Jon. And I'm thinking, I believe that was the connection that was made. Because she says a line like the servants at Winterfell had like whispers on their lips of like the killing of Arthur Dayne. I said, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I do believe that's Ashara we're talking about. So my opinion on this is like I no one likes this theory anymore, but I really enjoyed the R plus L equals D idea and the B plus A equals J idea, and that there was going to be a baby swap and it was going to be a big mirror to that book series that George R. R. Martin loves so much, the Iron King series. I liked that idea, so I thought that what was going on in here was kind of some stuff trying to imply that Jon was Ashara's kid with Brandon was kind of, I thought that was a fun way of looking at it. Now, is that true? I don't know. There's a lot of argument back and forth. Ruben says, he says don't ask about Jon, but can't mention Ashara. And so I thought that was like, that's supposed to be kind of little evidence. Like you pick up on that and you're like, oh, okay, so Ashara is in the mix here, with Jon. Which if Lyanna's in the mix and Ashara is like only one of these can be his baby mama in theory, so we're trying to figure out like, who the baby mama really is. That's the mystery. But I would be open to other interpretations of that. That was just the one that I enjoyed the most, because like I said, just cross comparison to stories that George likes either from real life or from fiction. The baby swapping is just like a thing that happens in several works that he enjoys. And, it's not really a big stretch. Like, I think everybody's first guess when they hear about who Jon really is they're like, oh, well, Jon's Lyanna's kid with Rhaegar, obviously. And it's like, well, it's not really a mystery if you guess it right away. It's not really a reveal if the reveal is the very first thing you'd guess. So, because people are always like, oh, we've had a long time to read the books, and that's why everybody always guesses that, because we've had so long to read. And I'm like, I don't know, I read the books like before anyone showed me the theory, and I guessed that like immediately. I was like, oh, he's trying to bait us into thinking that that's what's happening here. It's obviously it's a fake out. So maybe I'm just totally fucking wrong, but there's also the argument, like I said, that I enjoy that, that there is going to be a reveal at the end. And I think that there's several thematic elements. Like you could do a long Preston Jacobs ramble about like why there's so many elements, that cross over there. But like Jon's whole thing, he's always in his mind talking about how he's not really a Stark, how he's not really a Stark, how he's not really a Stark. And Ned like never thinks of Jon like ever, like in his personal thoughts, other than like when he thinks of a bastard one time. But Ned's always thinking about Dany, and he basically prepares to go to war with Robert after getting kicked off the Small Council because Robert wanted to kill Dany. So I was like, oh, when I thought that read of the mystery was quite fun. That it's a fake out. You think that Jon's actually this true chosen king, but actually he's a Stark, and that whole thing he's been beating himself up over is not true. He really is a Stark. He arguably is the true heir to Winterfell. And then Dany, who has all this connection to Rhaegar and keeps thinking of herself as Rhaegar in the visions and stuff, that she would be Rhaegar's true daughter. So that's what I would say is that's my favorite way of looking at it. I'm totally open to other interpretations of that because, R plus L equals J is obviously show canon, and people kind of take that as gospel nowadays, that that's going to be the way it ends. And I don't know if we should commit to that understanding, but I certainly see the weight that carries. I certainly can see that being the weight that it carries. And if you read, some other works that that George R. R. Martin likes, that does appear to be, kind of sort of more or less, a trope that he also enjoys. I just think that he oftentimes doesn't trend that direction, that he tries to do a lot of like, kind of double fake out kind of things. So another Ashara question, though, to just totally slip gears here, but also remain in the Ashara lane. What happened to Ashara Dayne? Who dishonored her at Harrenhal, and who did she look to at Harrenhal? And again, I want to tie it back in all to the same thing. I want to be like, well, it's pretty obvious from the story, the text we have present, that who she looked to was Brandon. And that's why it's ambiguous, and that's why we hear Brandon's a womanizer. And it's like all the elements are there that if you take the story on its face, you'd go, oh, well, it's meant to sound like she looked to Ned. But then you look at all the clues and hints and evidence, and you're like, okay, it wasn't Ned, it was actually Brandon. And that's why Barristan can't tell us which Stark it was, because he's, it's part of the ambiguousness of the mystery. So yeah, I mean, like, I've heard a lot of different things, though. I mean, so like I've heard that she, the idea, I think In Deep Geek is the one who promotes this one, and I personally found the theory video to be a little like corny for my taste. Like, there's just so many extrapolations that I'm just like, you can't just make everything up, right? But people do love this theory, and I will say it's very popular, and it has some literary basis, in some older stories. So I don't want to chuck the baby out with the bathwater, even if I think it's too deep of a read or a little bit cheesy. So there's the argument that she looks to Stark to cover up her love with Howland Reed. Kind of wacky, but it's another option. And so I think that Martin is intending to present with a puzzle. He's like, well, there was a couple different dudes there, and they all were either Starks or associated with Starks. So, there's your mystery. Figure it out. R plus L equals Harry Potter. No, I doubt it, because I think George is like most of us in the modern era, not a big JRR or JRR what's her name, J.K. Rowling fan. Although that would be the equation that would be the equation I think he's trying to defeat, though. You know what I mean? Like, I think because he doesn't like sort of the cliche and the pop that Rowling is more associated with. He doesn't like the pop so much. He doesn't like the cliche as much, unless it's like the right way. And so I feel like, yeah, it's a very Harry Potter chosen one story for Jon to be the Secret King of Westeros and yada, 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 yada. Does George write those stories is a better question. I'd argue no, he doesn't. Fundamentally, he tries to write the opposite direction, but I don't want to shoot it down, because totally possibility, totally maybe that's the way it was, and there's tons of evidence for it, you could argue. So in my opinion, though, to return to the question a little bit, I don't think that it was Ned, and I don't think it was Howland. I think it was Brandon she looked to, and I think that that's arguably where we're going to find Jon's parentage to lie at. I think that we'll find it intersecting in those areas, and I think that all those stories will come back to us, and we'll have to look back at those things and go, okay, that's what was going on there. Yeah, because the secretive prince thing is annoying, because even stories that are about people who don't have special blood right in the top are secret prince are, yeah. So what Yuli's saying here, it is kind of an annoying overused trope, you know what I mean? Like, and it is also just kind of an annoying message, like the chosen one dude message. It's like, I just don't think it's very a Martin thing. Like, and I love stories like that. There's plenty of stories with the chosen bro that I think are cool. But like, if you want to analyze them for like substance, they don't got as much substance generally. They're generally a lot more contrived, and I don't know that Martin likes that. So again, there's evidence either both ways, but I tend to go one way on that. Let's see here. Is it possible that we will see a character like Tommen, or even Fagon, or even Shireen sitting the Iron Throne by the end of the series? This person writes that they feel the books are becoming too predictable, in that a set of characters are poised to win. In other words, what are the chances that an outside contender wins the game in the end? I hope that George R. R. Martin has it in him to make a really unpredictable ending. So my feelings on this is that the Game of Thrones TV show made a really big deal about the Game of Thrones as a concept, and about winning. And everything being a race between guys all trying to win the Iron Throne and like, yeah, I don't think Martin like ever intended that to be the way things were looked at, and so I don't think he's going to go with that being the ending either. The show goes with the destruction of the Iron Throne and the electing of King Bran, which is weird to me as a concept because I don't know that George R. R. Martin likes to suck Plato's dick that much and believes that like the technocratic society of the undying emperor god, like that's kind of like you're licking Plato's nuts and you're licking Dune's nuts at the exact same time. And I just don't personally like think that Martin does that. I don't know that he's looking to hey, it's Andy. What's going on, Andy? How's it going? I don't know that he's personally looking to regurgitate the message of the Republic or regurgitate the message of Dune. I think that he has his own takes, and I don't know. He says it's going to be a bittersweet ending. I've heard him say a couple times in like interviews, and heard a couple of people mention the idea that it's going to be a bittersweet ending. So I do like the idea that the problems aren't solved, but I also like the idea that the show may have been on the right track with the somewhat of the dissolution of the throne, the falling of the current systems of power to a degree. But I also like, I want to push back against the idea that the story is going to end with like the fall of feudalism. I don't think that Martin is going there. I don't think that Martin is going for that. So if I had to take a stance on how I think the books are going to end, I mean, I think that the destruction of the Iron Throne and the reconstitution of governments as something different is a likely ending. Like, people thought that the ending of Sansa being ruler of the North, even though her bloodline was ruling Westeros and then being separate kingdoms, was a weird thing. But I could see something like that happening, a splitting of the Seven Kingdoms, and then new power structures emerging in a more sensible manner in the story at the end. Do I think that Shireen or young Griff will end up being on the throne? Like, I certainly think that young Griff will get to King's Landing. How it gets taken / destroyed, I don't know. Obviously, the show went with Dany at the Battle of the Bells Part 2 burning. I kind of think that role might be filled by Connington. Part of me wonders if Connington will be the one who, in an act of vengeance, burns down a bunch of shit. You know, because he has that whole storyline of, I didn't burn the town down and kill everybody. And so, Captain Time, just show him. But yeah, but so I'm not positive that everything will go down the way they portray it in the show. I'm actually positive it will go down in different ways, but I think that some of those core elements might remain. Like, if you guys watched my thoughts on Littlefinger at the very end, I kind of think the trial of Littlefinger, which is the ending for him in the show, will be what'll happen to him. I just think it'll be more spicy. Like, Stoneheart will be conducting the trial, or like, you know, they'll have a bunch of other characters there that we didn't see, like Jane Poole will be there, and like, you know, like I think it'll just be more spicy, you know, in terms of what we get. But I don't know that the core elements will change. I think D&D are really bad hack writers personally. So like, if you gave them like the bullet points of how the books would end, I could easily see them fucking it up and throwing a wrench in it. But I could see those bullet points that came from George being more or less accurate. So yeah, I that's kind of how I would try to answer that question. I think the Iron Throne is going to change hands a couple times before the end. Like, I do think one or two people are gonna get to that chair. But we also don't know what Cersei and Euron are going to do. There's a lot of elements that are highly advanced in the books and totally underdeveloped in the show. So I have a hard time making predictions like that. But to the underlying portion of this question of, like, you know, is the fundamental thing about games and winners and all that, I don't think that George likes that viewpoint as much as the show did. So I think that we should expect societal upheaval. I think we should expect potentially the end of the Iron Throne as a thing. I think we should expect maybe the dissolution of the Seven Kingdoms. But I don't know that we should be expecting Tommen to be sitting the throne. You know, I love Tommen. I want Tommen to live so much. Like if George R. R. Martin hurts Sir Pounce, I may actually throw a brick through his window. So no, not really. You know, obviously YouTube, don't take me too fucking seriously, but no, it'll be super disappointing and very tragic. Very Martin, obviously. But very, very tragic and fucked up if Tommen dies. I really hope that he ends up ruling Casterly Rock. You know, that that he ends up in that position. But bittersweet ending for sure, and I think some major political upheavals, potentially even the dissolution of the Westerosi throne and kingdoms to come in the end of the books. Uh, let's see here. What was it? Someone said, oh, someone asked a message and then it went away. It's a message retracted. Oh well. So yeah. If you want to ask that question again, ask me the question that got retracted. I was curious to answer that one. Oh, in your opinion, will Varys die in the books? Yes, absolutely yes. I personally think so. I think he's gonna die more or less exactly the same way he's died in the show. Actually, it's just gonna make a lot more sense. So flash forward to the ending of my Varys and Illyrio series. Little sneak peek. I'm of the belief that Dany is going to burn her way back to Westeros, and it's going to start out more or less attempting to be on the right foot. Like, she'll liberate Volantis, and it will be bloody and violent, but more or less Volantis will be freed. What their future will be, I don't know. That's a lot of part of her story, is the idea of, what you do with societies once you topple them. But I think she's going to burn Volantis, and I think that what's going to happen is that, we know only a handful of things about the Tiger Cloaks, and we know only a handful of things about Volantis. And the things that we know is that the Tiger Cloaks are incredibly fucking loyal to R'hllor and incredibly fucking loyal to the Church. So loyal to the Church that the guys who own these slave soldiers are like, I don't know, should we send these guys to purge the Church? Maybe they'll turn on us. So those are the elements we have with Volantis. And we have the woman at the waterfront, the widow at the waterfront, talking about how she wants Dany to come save them. So, to me, all the elements are there for the Volantian fleet to arrive at the victory of Dany's forces in that battle, and for her to return, potentially even around the same time they're arriving. Or for them to put... Because I think there could be a double siege of Meereen. Meereen is likely in for a re-sacking, as in... Mokondak, I think it's Mokondak, Skahaz Mokondak, we'll close the gates and line the crossbowmen up on the wall and start attacking Dany's forces. Dany's forces will win the battle outside and then sack the city again, is a likely possibility in my mind. And they may sack the city again with the help of the Volantene soldiers and, the Ironborn and stuff. So it complicated numerous ways that could play out, but I see eventually her consolidating power over the forces there. What's remaining of the Unsullied, the freedmen's companies of the Free Brothers, the Sellsword companies, the Volantene soldiers, the Volantene fleet. I think it's the Dothraki that she brings with her, and the dragons. I think where it's one big compilation army, and more or less, so, predictions, vague predictions. But so that force is going to be heading to Volantis, and Volantis is just a stop on the way to Pentos. And by the time that she's toppled the cities in Slaver's Bay and toppled Volantis, by the time she gets to Illyrio, the chickens will have come home to roost. And Illyrio has a line where he's talking to Tyrion, and Tyrion's like, I don't know, man, what if your boys betray us and tell all about me being in your palanquin? And he's like, oh, my household loves me, and these slaves are totally loyal. And Tyrion's like, those words will be the death of you. In his own mind, he thinks that. And I think that's foreshadowing, personally. I think that this is all going to come home to roost for Illyrio, and that Pentos will burn after Volantis burns, and that Illyrio will die, and the mansion will burn, and then Dany will set sail for Westeros, and it will be on the heels of this already pretty long military campaign, where she destroys the lies of, young Griff and of her childhood and all these various things, because, there is some element to that whole breaker of lies thing, that is true. The prophecies always have, some truth in them. They always have a bunch of bullshit in them, too. But there's always, it's a work of literature. I mean, there's always some, connections. And so, I think the big thing for her is that, Varys and Illyrio are definitely antagonistical to her. That, to me, I don't see any real scenario involving Varys and Illyrio in which they don't kill Dany, and they have more or less tried to over the time. And so I think that that's what'll happen. That Essos will burn, Pentos will burn, Illyrio will die, Dany will make it to Westeros. And, she's going to be, it's going to be complicated. It's going to be kind of an inversion of the original plan. Varys originally wanted a civil war, an invasion led by the Mad King's son with the Dothraki, and then an invasion with young Griff to clean everything up and install a new leader on the throne. And so I think the inverse will happen. Civil war, followed by the invasion of Young Griff, followed by Dany showing up to topple shit. And it will all the chickens will come home to roost. That things will be exposed, that stuff will happen to people who were making these long-term plans that thought they were so safe, that all their shit will blow up. And that's kind of where I think that Varys and Illyrio are headed, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, my interpretation of the two of them is that they are the Baron Harkonnen cut in half and put into two equal portions, spliced with a few other different things that make it not so obvious that they are the Baron Harkonnen cut in half. Shout out to Hills Alive, for that little insight. Just have to comment on my last video or the previous one or something about the Baron Harkonnen, and I read into it a little bit. I've never actually read the whole Dune book. Shame on me. I know nerd card rescinded. But I have read a lot of the intro when the Baron Harkonnen was my favorite part of the beginning couple of chapters, and so I kind of went and did some digging on him, and I was like, fuck, man, this it really is. I think that Varys and Illyrio are the Baron Harkonnen cut in half into two receptive portions, and then Muad'Dib. No, the thing is, I don't think there is a Muad'Dib. I think that it's a similar plan. It's not a direct rip, but it's a similar idea. The Harkonnens are going to do an action that makes the planet unstable, and then they're going to inject the nephew of the Baron to solve the problem and make everything happy, and yay, House Harkonnen. And House Harkonnen is intimately linked by blood to House Atreides. There's a whole, Harkonnens and Atreides, Blackfire. It's not the same thing, but it's got the vibes. It's like you could tell that George R. R. Martin read Frank Herbert, in my opinion, if you look at that story. And so, more or less, I think he's drawing elements from that. I think he's drawing elements from the Baron Harkonnen. I think that's why we see a lot of various different things, like the abusing of the children's and the weird sexual appetites. And I think there's little literary tidbits that clue us in. And then, if I'm not much mistaken, it is the nephew of the Baron Harkonnen that is the one they want to install as the savior of Arrakis that comes and brings peace and yay, House Harkonnen. And that would play in incredibly well if young Griff is Varys' nephew. Sweet Robin is the Muad'Dib. There we go. Sweet Robin is the Muad'Dib. So, it's a lot of complex, jumbled thoughts on that. I'm going to try to clarify some of this stuff and try to get a better read on it when I do the ending of the Varys and Illyrio series, where I kind of talk about where I think the story with them will go. But more or less, I think that they're doomed to fall into the same trap that the Harkonnens did, in a lot of ways. And I think there are some big literary parallels there. And again, shout out to Hills Alive for bringing that up. I don't know if she'll do a video on Harkonnen or something like that, but I'd certainly like to see a deeper dive into his character by someone who's read the complete Dune series, because I just like to watch the parallels get pointed out, because the ones I see as a not heavy Dune reader are pretty strong. And so I would say that the fate of the Blackfire is going to be similar to the fate of the Harkonnens. They're not going to be the winners in the end, and their people will die. Their chickens will come home to roost. Speaking of which, RIG, what do you think about Jon becoming a monarch? Because I don't believe that'll ever happen. Yeah, I severely doubt that will happen. My personal thing about Jon is that I think Jon is the peacemaker. I think Jon will be the one to make peace with the others, and I think that's how I don't think humanity can defeat the others. I don't think they're defeatable, but maybe I'm wrong. Obviously Sam killed one, but I think that fundamentally that the people in the story have to pick peace over war, and Jon, I think, is going to be an instrumental character in doing that. I think Jon will be one of the people, like how he picked peace with the wildlings. Like, he actively assessed the situation, heard all the weird prejudices, met the wildlings himself, and chose peace. And I think that something like that already happened with the others canonically. We already have that pretty strong evidence that there canonically was sympathetic understanding towards the others that led to peace. And so because of that, I think that Jon is going to fall into that role, and I don't really see Jon. Jon, I believe, could easily be the Chair of Winterfell because of, if you don't buy into R plus equals J, but either way, whether you buy plus J or not, Jon potentially has heir inheritances to the throne, to Winterfell, to all these fantastic places and things. And I don't think he's going to do that. I think that Jon is, like I said, he's probably gonna pick the Wall, honestly, or something similar. And so I think that Jon's ending will be particularly bittersweet in a lot of regards. Bitter in his own life, bitter in how things turn out for him, but sweet in being a peacemaker, sweet in his choices as an individual, and sweet in his choices as a human being. So that's kind of would be my take on Jon as the monarch. It's like I don't think so. Yeah, I also agree with on Andres. Yeah, you're normally Andi, so my pronunciation of anything is terrible. So Andres Martins, Andi Martins. But what Andi is saying here, I agree with a lot. And I don't know if you guys chat with Andi in the forums. He's really well read in Martin's works. So if you encounter him in the Discord, he can elaborate on a lot of this stuff about the way Martin writes. And I think that looking at Jon through the lens of a peacemaker character is something that is just endorsed in a lot of Martin's work. The idea that humans, we people have to choose peace. So that would kind of be, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally misreading that and I'm totally off the mark. So open to interpretation, but my thoughts is that I think Jon's path is the path the peacemaker. The peacemaker. He's going to continue that role, and I think the strongest evidence for that is that his current behavior, that he's already following that role. He's already living that life more or less. Oh, so Glidus is mispronunciation of Glidus also mispronounces Andi's name, which makes me feel better. I'm not the only one. Interestingly, Glidus came on to play nerd games with us in the Interesting Nerd Club, and the recording got corrupted when Tom went to export it. So we had a very fun game. But sadly, it was ruined in the export. So hopefully Glidus will return and he'll play some more games again with us. So moving on, new question. Here's a random funny one, just because I mentioned the INC just now. Where did you find those Interesting Nerd Club dudes at? I want more of them, is what the question says. So if you like the Interesting Nerd Club, if you liked listening to me talk to them on my little talks that I was doing that I keep forgetting to edit and have not been uploading anymore of, we'll get back there one of those days. But if you like them, they're on YouTube. I hang out in their chat sometimes. So yeah, the Interesting Nerd Club, very, very fun people. They do a lot of wild theories. If you love wild theories and you love just weird wild theory shit, go check out that channel. Whitney Davis says in the chat here, what do you think Bloodraven really wants with Bran? Tenfold more or less as he alluded. What do I think that he wants? So honestly, that's one that I would need to do some in-depth rereads in order to maybe form like a 100% opinion on it. But I don't think Bloodraven has the realm's best interest in mind any more than Varys does. If you look at Bloodraven's IRL life, he's very, very much concerned with which lineage of House Targaryen survives to rule. And so I think his objectives lie a lot closer to home than some people think about him. There's a lot of ideas out there about Bloodraven, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like he's a revenge-based character. Like so many characters in our story, he's caught up in these revenge cycles, and I don't think he's thinking about the betterment of the future of the world or humanity or any of that stuff. If you buy into the idea that the Children of the Forest are using him, which I think is a fun one, and that the Children of the Forest are antithetical to humanity and they would like to see our downfall because we destroyed them, which is an interesting idea. I think that his character plays even harder into that. He's the kind of character who's so obsessed with his own family problems and woes and shit, and so obsessed with shaping the future to be like the vision of House Targaryen's future that he wants, that he could easily be controlled and manipulated by other forces because he's so fucking blindsided. But that's only one interpretation of Bloodraven. You could say a lot of things about Bloodraven, and they arguably may or may not be true. So there's also the idea that Bloodraven is grooming Bran for a body swap. which is cool. Like, I think it's a fun idea, that he's basically been trying to train any number of kids from like a young age. Euron is arguably one of these kids that he could have been infiltrating the minds of, and that he's been getting into people's brains and shaping them and trying to make a vessel. So I mean, I think that that's more or less is a pretty fun idea. Whitney Davis also says, do you think Bloodraven is lying about time travel? So yeah, so that kind of plays in this whole thing. So Bran arguably, very heavily arguably, proves that time travel is real. And Preston has a wonderful video. Hey, it's Company of the Cat. Preston has a wonderful video on that whole idea of the time traveling Bran. And some people think it's too out there. Some people think it's not out there enough. But I think his basic premise of that George R. R. Martin does time travel a certain way, and that certain way is evolved from and extrapolated from the science fiction writings around time travel that precede him or then are part of his generation and inform him. Like, I think that is a pretty accurate read of the situation. So I don't know if Bran will be in the Winterfell pools, like how Preston Jacobs thinks he will be. But the idea that Bran is able to time travel because time travel works a certain way, because it always works that way in Martin stories, or not always, but that Martin has been refining an idea of time travel over a couple of stories and has kind of blended it in with many of the time travel ideas from his generation of sci-fi writers. I think that's a pretty nail on the head kind of assessment. And so I'm in the camp that I do believe that Bran has access to some time traveling powers, and that Bloodraven is either unable to do it himself or he has been lying about it. It could easily be that Bloodraven is just not powerful enough to do it. He's very powerful. He's powerful as hell, but he's just not quite that powerful. And that might even be part of the reason why he's trying to harvest Bran. Maybe he thinks that by training up a green seer who's capable of manipulating time, that he can then go and do all the shit he needs to do. So there's a couple interesting ways of looking at that. I would say that Jacobs presents, in his video, Preston presents like a kind of a small scope version of what Bran is using time travel for, which is like, it's like only relative to his own journey, more or less. Like, he's not like going back and, before he was born and affecting events, and he's not like going all over the world and affecting events. It's kind of narrow and localized to his own tale. I actually kind of like that. A lot of people push back on that, like, oh, Bran's in everyone's dreams. He's everywhere. He's all the time. Like, I don't think so. I think that we're seeing a lot of not self-contained, but a lot of like threads that are stories and storylines that weave together. We're not seeing like a person weaving all the storylines together. I don't know that all the storylines are weaving because Bran is doing it. I think these storylines are weaving, and one of them is Bran, and he has time travel, and that can affect other things, that can affect the whole world. But I don't think that he's giving everyone their visions, or anything like that. So I think that the narrow idea is pretty good. Oh, Company the Cat just said that she'll be here in the chat pretty soon. So we'll get to talk with her and ask her opinion on a couple of these fun questions. If you guys don't already know Company the Cat's channel, Company the Cat has a really cool YouTube channel doing Ice and Fire stuff kind of all over. I think she's at House of the Dragon video too, but I don't remember if she's done more House of the Dragon stuff. But great dives into the mythology and the lore behind a lot of the stuff. If you like the Ironborn, there's a great Ironborn one. There's some analyzing the Faith of the Seven and the roles of the different archetypes and stuff. So definitely check out the Company of the Cat videos if you have not already. And then we'll jump onto a new question here. Let's find another one that is kind of fun. What if there were fire others from the lands the long summer? Would that be crazy or what? Yeah, that would be wild. I don't know if that's the case. And I know a lot of people like the idea of fire wights. I'm a little bit like on the fence about what that means. I'm like, if like, because I'm like, the wights we see in the story definitely don't act like Beric, if that makes sense. Like, Beric is totally conscious of like who he used to be. Like, it's slipping away from him. He's almost like an empty vessel in a lot of weird ways, but like, like a reanimated body with no soul, like in some ways, weirdly enough. But yeah, it's like, so the fire wights thing is one that I'm a little torn on, and maybe I need to do some rereading to analyze that. And a lot of people say Jon's going to be a fire wight. And I'm not 100% certain of that. Oh, hey, it's Company the Cat.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Hopefully,
Good, you?
oh, good, good, good. If anyone can't hear Company the Cat in the chat, just holler, and then we'll adjust the volumes and settings and stuff. But yeah, so Company the Cat, do you want to take a whack at this weird question? What is your opinion on fire wights and the lands of the long summer?
To be honest, the first time that I read the world book and they were talking about the demons from the east. Can you hear me? Because I cannot.
Oh, I can hear you okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I can hear you good on my end. I hope that I'm guessing the stream can hear you. I'm guessing they can hear. Yeah, Amani says everyone's all clear, so we're good. But yeah. Oh, Arthurian's here too.
Yeah, the first time that I heard about the demons from the east, the first thing that came to my mind, it was dragons.
Yeah, that's an interesting take too. Like, yeah, I think some people would maybe argue that it's something else, but that's a fun take. The demons of the east is dragons. Arthurian, since you just popped in, did you hear the question we're talking about? We're talking about this this idea of were there fire others from the lands of the long summer and or are there fire wights? And then I think Company of the Cat dropped out, had some sound issues, so hopefully she'll jump back in a second. But do you have any thoughts on fire wights? Oh, Arthurian's here, but I hear no sound coming from Arthurian. All right, Arthurian's gonna have to figure out his sound. Hey, Company of the Cat's back. Apparently we're having sound problems all around. Apparently.
Great.
But yeah, no. Did you have anything else you want to say about the lands of the long summer and that sort of stuff while we're waiting for Arthurian to do sound? Oh, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. I just, for some reason, I have a huge delay.
Oh probably, no, yeah.
I think
that's probably true. It could be Discord just getting all wacky.
Yeah, I'm wearing headphones now, so we will not have that problem, I think.
So I hope. As someone who hasn't read the World Book at all, unfortunately,
oh my god, it's my favorite publication lore-wise, hands down.
The Lands of the Long Summer, in the World Book, what do we get in terms of elaboration on that? Like, what do they say about it?
We don't. Actually, we don't. They say that they had demons coming from the east, like we have White Walkers from the north. This is it. But considering what we know about the lands there, the first thing that I thought it was dragons. They were the first dragons. Imagine if you don't know about dragons, just flying shit coming from the east. Yeah, of course you're gonna say they are demons.
Yeah, that would be pretty fucking demonic.
Yeah, and considering that the 5 forts are fused stone, which we know you need the dragon fire for that.
So really quick, since we brought up fused stone, I always thought fused stone was concrete. Like I thought that's how all of that stuff was, that they were just describing the technology of concrete. And then the other one I've heard is that it's actually made with dragon fire, that you literally need dragons to do the construction.
The fused stone the Valyrians had, yes, as far as we know, at least. I don't know if it's true, because we have a lot of different black stuff going around. Not all of them are fused.
Yeah, because the black stone, and if you guys haven't seen, Kevin Pendragon does a super good black stone video, is a distinctly different thing from fused stone. And it's oily. It's oily in texture. Yeah, oily in texture. And I heard the idea that it's plastics is one I've heard that was kind of a fun thought. And then oily black stone.
The first time. It sounds like basalt.
Basalt? Oh, okay. So
it sounds.
Are you into any of? Are you into any of those weird, like ancient aliens type theories?
No.
I like the ancient aliens theories in Ice and Fire because the Black Stone comes from the Thousand Worlds. So he's either just doing.
I'm going much very much real world, those sorts of theories.
Oh, the Graham Hancock. The Netflix.
Yeah, because I know there's like one of the classic like theories that people like to come up with for things like the pyramids and other weird stuff is like the idea that you just kind of melt like rock and then just pour it in like concrete. So I think particularly for a fantasy setting that, makes a lot more sense for something like the fused stones and like the smooth wall. I guess it would just be, the equivalent of concrete that is just a solid rock.
Yeah.
And that'd be easy to do with Dragonfire as well, because I want to say like at Harrenhal we can see, the stone getting melty and stuff, unless I'm totally misremembering that.
No, it is true.
No,
It's true.
no,
They
you're
they
correct.
melt the stone at Harrenhal, and I actually had a weird hypothesis about that. That you'd have to. There's no way to test it, but I speculated on the idea that I wonder if dragon fire contains some sort of inherently corrosive material, or something that helps dissolve the stone and makes it easier for things that are hit by the dragon fire to melt. So I was like, so maybe Dragonfire just has some wonderful properties that make it particularly useful for melting and shaping stone. And sorry, Company the Cat, you were trying to say something.
I forgot about it. What did I want to say? I don't remember. Oh yeah, that moat kaolin is made out of basalt, and it described as oily too.
Oh.
The first thing that they say is that it's oily, very, very dark, and it looks like it absorbs the light. And this is what I thought the first time that they were talking about the oily stone. It was actually basalt, because the pores on the rock is very, very small. So it looks oily, but it's not actually oily.
Okay.
It just, the water glides off.
That's a very interesting interpretation. I don't remember that in the books. Ooh, sorry.
It was in a Theon. It was in a Theon chapter when the Ironborn were in the neck.
Okay, so it's not when
And
it's not when you go through
described
its
it as
Rob.
oily.
It's not when you go through its Rob. It's when Theon returns with Ramsay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will have to reread that. That's really really interesting. I had missed that whole reference there. And that I guess that makes
And
me.
I think Catelyn too described it as oily once, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. So that's fascinating. That's a really interesting thing, because I'd only ever heard about it in like the very small references or the references to the world book in like other YouTube videos and stuff. I didn't know that that both Theon and Catelyn were actually observing that in the Moat Caitlin.
Yeah, Theon for sure, and I think Catelyn too, but I'm not 100% about Catelyn. Theon though, for sure.
Arthurian, did you have any additional comments on the stone, or should we pull another question here?
Well, I don't think I have anything else on the stone, not that I can think of. So yeah, I'd move forward, I suppose.
Moat Caitlin is a whole can of worms, is what is what Ratty Saddy says. Yeah, Andy's mentioning a few mentions of basalt here too. All right, let me see here. So, new question coming up. In your opinion, who is the rightful ruler of Westeros? And I think that everyone who knows me even moderately well knows that my answer is Daemon Blackfire. Yeah. So, Company the Cat, Andy agrees with your assessment of the stone as being basalt, which is, I think that's one of the more interesting interpretations.
I'm not 100% sure. It just sounds like basalt. But if it was, wouldn't they know that Moat Cailin is basalt? If the chair, for example, was basalt, wouldn't they know?
Yeah, that's what surprised me, is they didn't compare it to anything.
That's the thing, that it sounds like something similar, but it's not exactly. It cannot be.
Yeah. Like maybe it's just he's taking kind of like the real world impressions of basalt and then making it into a material that appears in ice and fire that isn't actually like a normal rock mineral kind of thing.
But it is also volcanic, like Dragonglass is volcanic, so I don't know.
I'll ask my sister. She's a volcanologist. I am an idiot when it comes to any of this stuff. But I was gonna say, yeah, the thing that really interests me with the Blackstone is the fact that it occurs in the Thousand Worlds. So that to me was the vein of talking about it. That I was like, oh, hey, it occurs in the Thousand Worlds. Maybe the fires in the Thousand Worlds, you know. But
it's most of his books.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a bunch of his books. All the ones I can think of are Thousand Worlds, but there probably are references that are outside of it. Like, Andy, you would know the answer to this better than me, but the tower in this Tower of Ashes, isn't the buildings that he's exploring in the jungle, aren't they all made of blackstone also? I could swear it was all made of that same blackstone stuff. Yeah, maybe Andy can answer that question in the chat. It's been too hot of a minute for me. I need to go back and reread some of those Martin tales. All right, so yeah, who in your opinion is the rightful ruler of Westeros? Was the next question. So in my opinion, everyone who knows me even moderately well knows that I'm going to say Daemon Blackfyre. Daemon Blackfyre is the true ruler of Westeros. But
He should. He should. But, and there is a big but, if young Griff is a Blackfyre, which I think he is, I don't like him as a ruler, okay?
Yeah, I know.
So-
I'm not.
so no, Daemon.
I'm not a young Griff fan either. He, like I said, he lost all of my support when he threw a temper tantrum and knocked over
He's
Tyrion
a
Cyva's
brat.
board.
He's
I
a
was just like,
brat.
this brat.
He's a teen, so I'm gonna give him the benefit to be a brat.
That's true. He could grow up and become not a dick. It's possible.
Yeah, he's 15.
So yeah.
Because the kid is not 18, for sure.
So ruler of Westeros. Like I said, I the ruler of Westeros is like an arbitrary construct, you know. So who's the most fun? Daemon Blackfyre. So what are your guys' feelings? So does Westeros have an entitlement to a different system of government? Is there a favorite king you have? Are they all bad? Should we go back to when it was a bunch of different kingdoms warring? What's the best outcome here for you guys?
I have a controversial yet brave opinion here.
Is it Euron?
I don't think we have that much. We didn't have, like, we are talking like with Targaryens on the throne. We didn't have wars. We did a lot of them, many of them, like a lot of them. They just were on a bigger scale in the whole continent and not just random feuds here and there with different kingdoms. So I don't know. Democracy. I don't know.
So you think Westeros is due a change of government to something more legitimate. Legitimacy is the true king of Westeros.
Yeah.
What about you, Arthurian? Do you camp with a particular king, or do you camp with social revolution?
I would. I kind of feel like I liked that idea you were floating around earlier of just returning to independent kingdoms. Just have a bunch of kings instead of a seven kingdoms, or having seven kingdoms that are seven kingdoms and not one kingdom with seven hats on. Either that or just I think we just need to go back and revert to Thens, just have god kings again. I think that was neat.
All right, yeah. So the way of the thin, That's the true king of Westeros is the way of the thin. You heard it here first.
Exactly. Let's get Magnars again.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. We're going back to the Magnar system. Yeah, next, I think it's always a fun thing. Who's the legitimate ruler of Westeros? It's like, no one's the legitimate ruler of Westeros.
The friends that we did along the way.
Yeah, exactly. But who's the most fun? Who are the friends who made along the way? My favorite friend is Daemon Blackfyre. All right, so new question.
You know what? I think that Stannis would be a good king. I just think that he wouldn't be a very loved one.
Oh, okay. So you would potentially say Stannis. Yeah, so Stannis is one of my favorite ones for the idea of who's the true king. Okay? yeah, he's one of my favorite picks for true king. Who's the true king? Fucking Stannis. He sat there waiting his whole goddamn life to be for the right to the throne. Now everyone's telling him no.
No. I think Stannis would be the best king. The problem is, I think I went on this rant at your last live stream, and that was just one time we were hanging out. That if we're following, Westerosi tradition as we understand it, then it probably Joffrey, and by extension, I guess now Tommen would be the legitimate king by Westerosi law. So I would argue Stannis, from a legal sense, doesn't really have much of a claim. But I do think, like, from just a practical point, he would be the best king.
Yeah, but certainly of the Baratheons, he's my favorite one for king. No, I liked your take on Joffrey legitimate king because Robert did in fact write his name. He's the name who the other king that everyone said was king wrote down. Therefore, by the laws of kinging, he's king.
Exactly. I mean, and it's even like just goes and does a coup over it. At least pretend that there's ambiguity and call a great council. a great council would have been grand, but no, we'll just fake this document.
I'm gonna say it, the Ironborn are the worst people, but they have the right idea. Okay, they vote.
Yeah, voting. Yeah, vote. The Ironborn are arguably one of the more democratic little cultures in Westeros. They're like, well, we're only going to let certain people vote. Only like boat owning fighters, But if you're a boat owning fighter, then yeah, come roll up and throw down.
What do you think previous democracies did? What do you think they did in Athens?
Oh no, exactly. Yeah, that's the old model of democracy. Well, even like the original American democracy. Whoa, we need democracy, but only for an incredibly select portion of the population. We can't be letting the poor's vote. That would be undemocratic. Let the poor's vote. Sorry, we'll get too political, and I'll start railing on Aaron or on Edmund Burke's writings and shit. No. The origins of the idea.
And it's American politics, and I don't know shit. Just saying.
Oh no! The origins of all conservative politics come from more or less, reaction to the idea that emancipation should be spread throughout the various orders of society. But that's a massive amount of podcasts and like 50 different book recommendations. So, moving on. What are the 3 things you really want to happen in the Winds of Winter? The 3 things for the Winds of Winter for me, if just off the top of my head, I want a Baelish POV. Like, just George, stop giving us Littlefinger and not giving us Littlefinger POV. It's wrong. It's bad. It's a crime. Yeah, we will not tolerate the lack of Littlefinger POV. I think if Captain Time were here, he'd also agree with me.
Yeah, but we will not have it.
I know. Of course, we won't have it. George will never give us. He'll never give us the goods. The other one I want is Barristan.
This is going to be a hot take.
The other one I want is Barristan to survive. If I can get a Baelish, a living Barristan, and then what's one more thing I really want to happen in the Winds of Winter? Baelish, a living Barristan, and then I'll think on the third one. You guys give me your top 3. What's your hot 3?
I want Sam to learn something about grayscale. I need answers.
Ooh, okay.
I need answers. I have so many questions about a grayscale. I need answers. I also want Barristan alive.
Yeah, Barristan.
And
more Barristan is great.
I know, more Barristan is great. Barristan just, I love Barristan.
I would also like to have Pat's face alive, but I think he will die.
Ooh, okay, some patched face. Yeah, I also patched face. I think he also might get killed. Unfortunately,
I am pretty sure. Either he's gonna go and save Cyrene, or Cyrene's is gonna go to him, and I don't know which one is worse. Because I think Melisandre is gonna burn them.
No, I was wondering if she'd burn Patchface and Shireen like together, like if that would be like kind of how she calmed Shireen down a little bit to get her to so she's not just a crying, screaming child being tied to a post. She's more of like a it's you and your friend being tied to a post.
Great.
I think Mel is kind enough to care about not scaring the child she's murdering.
I just think that, oftentimes, children are lulled into doing the bad things. They're, people that's one of those things where I could see her burning Shireen's friend with her, or getting Patchface to lead her out to where the guards can grab her and seize her for the burning. I don't know. I could see it being dubious. Smells evil. She's an evil one.
I think that they're both gonna die at the same time because there is a quote in Dance that they say to Patchface, take Cyrene to her room.
Mm-hmm.
And she took Cyrene's hand, and it was like, we are gonna go together under the sea, and then we will rise again. And
definitely. I think there's a reason to think they'll die together. There is a reason to think they'll die together.
But I like Pats.
I know everyone always hates Patchface. They think he's all evil and shit, and I'm like, no, he just has severe brain damage, and he used to be a greenseer. He's just a severely brain-addled greenseer. He's just seeing things and then saying poems and stuff. And yeah, it's creepy because he's seeing creepy shit. He's seeing creepy shit,
He was a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave him alone.
Yeah, poor Patchface. Poor Patchface, And they make him wear that weird jingly hat. I mean, come on.
There's something there. I want to make a video on this because every time he says a quote or a usage or something, they always describe the way the bells jingle. with very weird ways. I don't remember all of them, but I have them highlighted in my books.
The meanings of jingle bells jingles, or not jingle bells, but
Rocks.
meaning of patch faces jingles. Patch faces the Muad'Dib. So do you have a third one? What would be your third best thing that you want to see in the Winds of Winter?
I want Arya to take Dark Sister.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
I think Dark Sister must be in the cave. So Mira is gonna take it, but Mira doesn't wield a sword, so doesn't really fit to take it.
Dark Sister's in Bloodraven's cave. Okay, yeah, no, you would be
obviously
probably
he was the
correct
last
about that.
person
Yeah,
that had it.
yeah, he probably didn't throw it away or something. Probably in the cave. Yeah,
it must be at least.
That or it's at Castle Black, which is another weird option. That it's at Castle Black somewhere hiding.
I don't know. I think that he took it. I think that it must be in the cave.
Yeah. So this leads into a weird tinfoil thought. You know how we see Hodor slicing up some of the wights with the old iron sword, and it bashes into pieces. It's a big chunk of metal, but it's not like potent in the way that Longclaw is potent, or the way arguably potent, questionably potent, and the way that Dragonglass is obviously potent. It's like Sam thinks that they're more or less potent in the same way. And so I kind of wonder if they'll need that sword for Hodor to help, fight people for a brief second, like I wonder if Hodor will kill a few things with that and then be holding the door and Mira will be like, oh, I gotta take the sword with me, I like Hodor fight scenes. Like I honestly was hoping for a little bit more Hodor rage fight scenes where he's just bashing corpses to pieces with pieces of metal. Like I just liked that. That was a big.
Yeah, but I don't like the fact that he's scared and in his head.
That's true. Like that's not good. But the action is excellent.
Yeah, but come on, guy.
No. Hodor is one of the characters that I'm like, oh my god, the poor fucking Hodor. And being warned is described as it's fucking evil. Like Bran is doing something evil. He's a kid, so maybe he doesn't know how evil is, but he's being awful to Hodor. How do they describe it? Like a dog that's been whipped until it wants to sit in the corner, basically. It's bad.
Question.
Yeah.
I was talking with my sister, and I want the chat to answer too. I was talking with my sister, and we were like, what do you think about Ilyn Payne? What is going to happen to him? And our conclusion was that he's probably going to get eaten by Nymeria.
That was my first guess.
Yeah, I don't, because Nymeria has a beef with him.
Yeah, and
Daria has one too.
In the chat, put in what you think Ilyn Payne's fate will be, or Ilyn Payne's fate, because I also was on the Nymeria train where I really think that the pack has to come back and eat some people. It's going to happen. People are going to get eaten, and I think that Payne is one of those guys who it would be kind of fun if he gets his head chopped off by the sword, but it's almost too obvious. That's why I think Littlefinger is going to be the one who gets his head lopped off at the trial by a Valyrian steel sword. But yeah, no, I think that Littlefinger or Payne or any of those people who were definitely involved in the murder of Ned, who were obviously there, obviously did the action, are all candidates for being eaten by Nymeria's pack at some point. What about you, Arthurian? Did you have a thought on Payne's fate?
I don't know. I mean, I like sort of the idea we're talking about, just because that seems interesting, but I also kind of don't see it happening. It's sort of I sort of imagine it won't happen, just because one, logistically, isn't he's still off with Jaime, right? Or have they separated? Because he was training with Jaime, I remember.
Yeah, they're both in the Riverlands currently, and the pack is in the Riverlands currently, so they're geographically able to attack each other, in theory.
I know geographically, it all theoretically makes sense, but I'm just thinking, if he's with Jaime, then narratively, I think it would be. I don't know how well that would go over if they're sort of in an army camp and everything. Yeah. It would have to be a weird stealth strike by the wolves.
Yeah, so I would.
And if it's not going to happen soon, I don't know if it will happen, because we're all imagining that at some point, or I don't know, maybe not all of us, but knowing the way George works, that Arya's sort of vengeance boner can't last forever, and eventually she, becomes a decent person.
Yeah, she'll have to
Unless
turn
he just
away
does
from it.
get the bad ending.
No,
So
I
I'm
think you're
sort of
right. It's a
imagining
birthright.
if it doesn't happen soon, it won't happen. And I don't see it happening soon if he's still tied up with the Jaime plot.
Okay, that's interesting because so there's a part where Jaime's cousin, I believe, the current warden of the West, is describing an attack on one of their camps where the massive wolf pack just rolls up and starts eating the horses, and they go right for the people. They're like, oh, the wolves had no fear of mail or swords. They had no fear of fire. And I was like, oh, that sounds like when Jaime's away off getting hung by Lady Stoneheart before he probably does a trial or whatever. Ilyn Payne's just back at camp, just sitting there, and the wolves been attacking camps, and because and Ani says Jaime's gonna split off from Ilyn Payne, won't he? He'll go with Brienne, leaving Payne to look for him. So yeah, that's exactly what I think is gonna happen. Is Payne's gonna be out there with limited forces, Jaime's gonna be gone, and the wolves are gonna be in the woods.
Yes, I'm waiting.
So total possibilities there. So I will say, Arthurian, one thought I had about Payne that I think is a Martin idea. Payne might also just get away. Like he may never, ever, ever have to take responsibility for any negative actions in his life, because tons of people IRL do horrible shit and are part of horrible shit, and they just get away. Nothing ever happens to them. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there is room for argument that certain characters like Payne or even maybe Littlefinger will get away just completely scot-free. Like they will just be alive at the end of the book, and there's just no one will have any way to take them down.
Payne, maybe. I don't think so about Littlefinger.
Yeah, I think he's too thematically important for him to fall in a certain way, but I'm like, Payne's one of those guys that just like how there's a bunch of unnamed people in Gregor's band who are just gonna go home and sow wheat into the fields and marry a woman and live a normal life, even though they were part of Gregor's fucking band. It's a reality of life and warfare. And so I feel like Martin will have commentary on that. And I feel like Payne could fit into that. So argument on both sides, but more or less, I like the wolf one better. So
yeah, me too. I want my media to eat some ass. Okay, can this sound very wrong and very wrong, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also that cathartic reader thing where it's wouldn't we all just love to watch Ilyn Payne get eaten by wolves? So here's
I feel like Ilyn Payne just.
Brienne and Nymeria, they're doing the job that needs to be done. Okay,
the job that needs to be done.
Okay, other than killing Ned, what does Ilyn do? Because onto the vengeance train. I know he's theoretically kills Ned.
Yeah.
And I say theoretically, I mean we watch him chop off the head. But we all sort of know that Ilyn Payne isn't some, mastermind planning it all. It was probably Joffrey or Littlefinger or someone.
No, he's just a head chopper.
So I feel if it's a vengeance thing, I don't think it'll be, oh boy, we got to watch Ilyn die. It'll be, oh boy, she's, killing somebody who did his sworn duty and didn't have a choice. It would definitely, I think, be in the vengeance bad camp if he does get murdered.
And I think it's a little cross split there. I think George has intentionally muddied the waters because yes, Payne is absolutely a cognitionless cog in a system. His job requires him to shut up and chop off heads and just deal with that shit. And you could be like, oh yeah, it's unfortunate society has that position and someone has to fulfill it. But also Payne likes his work. So there's a bit of a he's a bit of a perverse character in terms of the way he enjoys being able to partake in that illegitimate systemic violence. And so I'm I don't know. Payne's one of those guys that I have some sympathies, I guess, but also at the same time, I don't know, man, he did kind of in a way seek out that work. But you could make the question, well, how did life shape a man to make him seek out that work? And how does, systemic elements contribute to Payne in this society of Westeros and yada, yada,
see, yada. The argument I would make for that sort of stuff is this is probably best case scenario for an Ilyn Payne character then, is he gets to chop off the heads of enemies of the crown under strict orders. because the other scenario for somebody who just kind of enjoys doing that
Clegane,
sort of work is you end up with a second mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So like
Clegane.
he's doing the response, like, you know, I don't want to sound too praiseworthy, but, you know, he's doing the responsible thing and, you know, performing what at least in his society would be considered correct, legitimate violence.
Yeah.
Rather than,
for
you
that
know,
society,
banditry and
for that society, he has picked a legitimate avenue to do that. And so that's why I think George intentionally made him a muddy character. I think George wants you to argue over whether or not Payne should be condemned, you know, or if Payne is, if we're blaming Payne too much, you know, if we're putting too much blame on Payne.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the characters are. I mean, come on, like, Jaime was not a good guy either. We like him now more, but still not a great guy.
Yeah, no, and Martin's a master of that in a lot of ways.
Out of the window.
Martin's a master of showing you that people can be a little bit of both. They can be both a despicable, unlikable, irredeemable character and be some dude that you kind of really just want to kick back and have a drink with. You know, it's like it's weird. It's like and I don't want to blanket that statement too far because I think, yeah, obviously I don't think anyone legitimately actually wants to kick with the mountain unless you're a fucking psychopath. But Jaime's one of those guys that, like, how do you redeem Jaime? Maybe Martin's done it. Like, maybe, you know, like we all like him, or a lot of us like him, or we see the likable characteristics in him. We can see the good person without denying the bad person. And so, like, yeah, I think Payne is in that boat of characters that you're supposed to argue that about. So, new random question. This is an interesting one. What would you consider the first battle of the War of the Five Kings, and why?
All right, I have to put a disclaimer here. This was my question, and I'm using it to farm clips for a video I want to do.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Arthurian, you can keep your answer secret. Company of the Cat, what was the first battle of the War of the Five Kings, would you say?
I'm not sure. Everything hit the the shit hit the fan way too quickly at that point.
So yeah, I'm trying to think back, and I'm like, the first battle of the War of the Five Kings. Well, whose battles take place quickest? Because you could argue the first battles were like Gregor's raids. That's like the first time we hear like of violence, I think, coming from the Riverlands. That's the part where I usually start the War of the Five Kings in my mind, but I'm guessing that Arthurian has a sneaky other way of looking at it that I'm not picking up on.
I do. I won't explain my answer, but my quick hot take is Littlefinger's brothel first battle.
Okay, so that was my second answer. My second answer was going to be Littlefinger def set that up. It's an appallingly obvious Littlefinger setup. Like even Ned should have seen that one, like been like, fuck you, Littlefinger, setting me up like that. But yeah, like that's a great contender for the first battle, because yeah, it's the first time the forces that Littlefinger is trying to intentionally lure into a conflict have an open confrontation. So yeah, I like that. I like that interpretation. I like that interpretation as that's the first real fight of the War of the Five Kings. And in chat, feel free, toss out there, what do you think was the first battle of the War of the Five Kings?
Golden Tooth also is very...
So Flanker asked something in the chat here a minute back that I also wanted to get at. Winds of Winter release date predictions. I just thought that was a fun question. I'm in the boat that we're gonna get Winds. Dream is the one that I'm like, I don't know about. So best case predictions for me, mid 2024. More accurate predictions for me, late 2024, early 2025.
You're way too optimistic.
I don't know.
Or I'm way too pessimistic. I don't know.
I like to retain a bit of optimism, but like I said, those are my optimistic predictions. So, Company of the Cat, what's your pessimistic predictions on this?
No, 25, the closest, I think. Yeah. I don't think it's gonna be 24. We're in the middle. We're almost in the middle of 23, and there is nothing about announcements or anything to be 24.
Okay.
So 25 is the earliest, I think.
Okay. So you're saying I'm saying at earliest, like 2024, and you're saying earliest 2025. Arthurian, what do you think that we'll get wins first off, or and if so, do you have a date that you think we'll get it at?
I'm definitely the pessimist here. I'm saying I don't know. I probably would say we're not getting wins. I don't know if I'm certain enough to say like I'd put money on us not getting wins, but I would say it's more likely. I would say, maybe 55% or so we don't get wins.
So I'll be a pessimist for a second. I'll be a pessimist for a second and toss my hat in the ring. I think there is a high percentage chance we get wins in 2 sections, and a reasonable percentage chance that we don't get the second half. Like the same way that I fear for Dream is the same way I fear for the second half of Wins. I feel like we're gonna get half of it for sure. Like he will have enough to publish a book like before he dies, and he will do so before he like dies, I think. But but I want to be optimistic and say he could finish the whole series. I just like I think that Wins is very untenable in one section. I think that
I think he will. And there are other writers for if everything like goes wrong, but I think he will. Just especially after the series, people were spamming the shit out of George. If I was George, I would say just shut up and wait.
Just shut up and wait, right?
Oh my god, write it yourself.
And Preston has taken it upon himself to do so. People are out there writing it themselves.
They do. There are so many fanfics.
Hang on just one moment, guys. I have to turn off my heaters. My room is like heating up like fucking crazy. So keep the chat busy while I pop out for 2 seconds here.
All right, yeah. So part of my pessimism, so we can keep talking while randoms are away, is if you're familiar with, there's another YouTube channel called The Dragon Demands, I think. And he made a while ago, probably a couple of years ago now, probably during the pandemic years maybe. He was making a prediction that Winds would come out sort of by 2023. And his argument at the time was that stage play that is in production, or possibly came. I haven't been following the stage play news.
Is there a stage play in production?
Yeah, there's like
the stage play on the Harrenhal turn.
Yeah.
And yeah. So his argument was, George before in interviews had said, I won't reveal Harrenhal until, we sort of move further in the main story. So he was like, all right, George isn't going to, reveal what happened at Harrenhal until Winds come out. We know where he's about to reveal Harrenhal, therefore that should be evidence Winds is coming out. And I thought like that was a really good argument, and I definitely bought what he was saying. And then there was, the infamous update that, little is better than none, or whatever the quote. Yeah, and it's just like if he's comfortable like changing those sorts of things and just doing the stuff he said he wasn't going to do until he finishes Wins, I'm like, great, that's like the hopeless. I've become black-pilled. He's kind of just. It sounds like even George has started to accept that George won't release Wins.
Oh no, black-pilled on Winds of Winter. It's all pointless. We're never getting it.
Like again, George has started doing the stuff that he said he wasn't going to do until it's come out. Yeah. I'm kind of a little convinced George is convinced George won't finish Wins in time.
I sympathize with George because my IRL like is often like how he does Winds of Winter. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing. I think people who actually like seriously follow my YouTube channel, I think would easily be able to accuse me of this. They'd be like, you have said that you're gonna do so many things that you then just shift gears on or never do or like forget about. And I'm like, I promise they're all there, and they're all like, I have a kitchen with things cooking all over the place. And I feel like George is like that, but he's like an actual writer with actual deadlines who actually is like, like versus just like, a dude who has fun on YouTube. Like imagine if you had George, like I think he often just makes promises that he just because he's that kind of guy, or maybe he felt in a maybe he's having a good mood that day and he's like, Wins is come out tomorrow, motherfucker. It's so great. And then the next day he's all depressed and shit, and he's like, it's never happening. Some is better than none. Like I find George to be highly relatable and people to be awfully harsh on the poor man, even though I've been harsh on him too, you know?
Oh yeah, no, like I definitely understand and sympathize with George, which is part of the problem because I'm like, all right, if I was in George's shoes, when would this get finished? Oh, it's not. Like if I was writing this book,
Yeah, if I was in George's shoes,
either.
I'd make a bunch of unrealistic promises all the time. I'd make all the promises he ever made, and then I would be like, fuck, you know, guys. Like in my own mind, I'd be like, guys, it's gonna happen when it happens. You know, it's like it's not that it's not gonna happen. That's just gonna happen when it happens. So
The
yeah.
easiest thing is to go. You don't say anything.
Yeah,
That's what I would do.
That's the best authorial technique, is to just never address the fans whatsoever, and then
Yeah,
you become like a
it's great.
mysterious god figure, and they're just like, oh, one day they're just gonna release something, bro. It's amazing.
I have a theory. I know exactly what happened. In 2011, Martin and Rothfuss had an agreement to never finish their series because Kingkiller Chronicle also doesn't have a book.
Oh no. I was gonna say they all made a pact with the guy who wrote Berserk, and they're just gonna like leave it on red until they die. You know, they're just fucking. That's what the fans get. You bugged them too much. You sent them too many letters, and now all your favorites they all got together and they formed a death pact that they're just not gonna write anything. They'll just drink tequila.
But I would do that.
They'll just drink tequila until they die. That's Martin's life now. He's just like, I'm drinking tequila until I kick it. Fuck these damn fans. Could you blame him though? Could you blame him if that was his attitude?
No, I would do that straight up. I'm not gonna even lie about it. I do that already on my job.
Company of the Cats, just like whether it's my YouTube channel or my real work, you're just gonna get that shit when it comes. You better shut the fuck up.
If you want it, made it yourself, okay?
Oh man. So new question. What a Song of Ice and Fire house do you think you'd be a member of? And use any criteria you want. So for me, like my family's old-timey crest, like allegedly, you know, it's all old-timey shit, but allegedly we were one of William the Conqueror's sworn personal bodyguards and knights retainers and shit of like 50 or some 50 odd something, 60 odd something personal retainers that were like homeboys of the Conqueror and like good knights and shit. So I like to think that I would be related to one of the houses that came over with the Conqueror, maybe from Valyria. I'd probably be like a way down the line offshoot branch of the Celtigars, or you know, of House Valyrian. So what about you guys? You got any? Who would you be in the world of Westeros if you were in a house?
I would stay close to the sea and drink, so I'm gonna say somewhere in Dorne.
All right, the Cat's go with that Dornish influence. You'd be somewhere in the salty Dornish regions.
Either Dorne, or I'm gonna say Tarth only because I really like the description of the island. Sounds amazing.
Okay, so you'd Company of the Cat would be pretty nearby me. We'd all be in that general part of the ocean over there where young Griff is invading through. Not too far from Crackclaw Point and the Stormlands and all that sort of shit. Arthurian, what about you? If you had a house, what houses would you be from, or house would you be from in Ice and Fire?
I don't know if off the top of my head I could pick a particular house, but I definitely feel like I would go with one of those tropes of houses that used to be super cool and now kind of suck.
Mostly.
You know, people like
they were very cool.
Yeah. No, like you know, one of the like gardeners, or you know, just all of those lines where it's, we used to be kings back before the conquest, and now everyone thinks we're extinct.
So
you know, one of those types, or like who's
Arthurian,
I can't remember their name, but who has like the Checky lion in the
Osprey
in the Duncan? Osprey. I'd be like I'd be the Osprey equivalent. just sitting back, getting in petty wars, and just everyone's just we used to be so cool.
We used to be so good. No, I was gonna say you'd be old John Mudd or young John Mudd in the Golden Company. You'd be one of the Golden Company people.
Yeah.
We had a house back in Westeros. It was pretty badass 100 years ago. Now we're in the Golden Company. Oh, all right. Let me see here. Let's pull up another question. Let's grab another one here. Okay, here's another goofy one. That's just kind of like a fun question. if you had a sword, how would you name it? I always name things based on, either something funny, like I have an actual sword that I use for chopping people in Boohurt, that I call Lord Choppington the Third. It's just a particularly ugly-looking one-handed falchion that just sucks to get hit by, so, like, Lord Choppington. But, like, I named my cat Boot because he used to crawl inside one of my work boots when he was a little cat. So, I mean, like, I like to name things either something funny or something serious. So, like, if it was a particularly dope sword, I'd name it based on, like, it'd be like how they named Red Rain or something. Like, I'd kill some people with it or whatever and be throwing red drops over, it's Red Rain, cool sword name. Or, I said, if it was a goofy-looking sword, if it was an ugly, clunker of a sword, like if I had Ramsay's Falchion, I'd name it something just goofy as hell, Leave it to Cleaver, like, something like that. So what about you guys? What would you name your... And chat, feel free to tell us... Flanker says Mud in the chat. So Mud with 2 Ds, M-U-D-D, former ruling house or one of the prominent houses in the Riverlands. Catelyn goes past the grave of a Mud, and she's all thinking about shit, when she's on her way to and fro the Riverlands. And there's
Are they
Muds.
the ones at Oldstone?
Yeah,
Is that the Muds?
Yes, that's the Muds. Yeah,
yeah.
And they're now in the Golden Company, so you get the idea that the Muds were taken out of prominence prior to the conquest. Like, probably they were, I think it was wars. I think what she just says is that several lords came together to topple House Mud. So yeah, so wars would around the Annal times topple House Mud. And then later on, the family survives in theory in, like, these lesser branches that, like I said, you find Muds in the Golden Company being like, yeah, a long time ago in Westeros, we were rulers, So that's the Muds, to answer the Muds question. But sorry, you guys and in chat, how would you name your swords? Peter Windhorse says, I deal with a sword and nothing, so you could say nothing harmed you.
No, I have said this before. I tend to name stuff with very human names when they are not human, though, which doesn't make sense now. But when you ask me, the first thing that came to my mind was a very lame Greek name, and my mind was like, I would name it Pantelis, which doesn't make sense, but this is how I would call it.
No,
it's the equivalent of how do you call your sword? And I would be like John.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know.
My sword's named Frank. Just a name,
Josh.
Yeah. So you just name it some random, just like you just look at the sword and be like, you look like a Philip to me sword, or you look like a Bill sword.
Tyler. No, I'm not gonna name my sword Tyler. That's such a bad name. I don't like.
I like Brimbo Brimbo Baggins says Boy Breaker.
So I don't remember if this was in book canon, so I might be conflating my book and my show canon. But I to be quite honest, I kind of subscribe to the Hound theory on naming swords. That you don't.
You don't?
Yeah, just lots of people name their swords. Lots of I won't get you demonetized.
Oh, I know. There's a ton of dick joke swords. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. All right, let's see here. Here's another question. Okay, so, okay, here's a great one. Would you consider a collaboration with other YouTubers like Company of the Cat? Yes, absolutely. I would. I even have a recording of a talk that we did that I just never finished editing. And that will be out one day.
It's for the best.
that will be out one day. It was like 90% me asking questions about the show and Company of the Cat being like, that's boring, I don't want to talk about that, and like 10% us arguing about Mace Tyrell. It was great. Okay, so
now we're talking about.
I want to see that now. I need to hear people's hot takes on Mace.
Do you guys want to argue about Mace right now? Just for really briefly. Company of the Cat and I had like very polar takes on Mace, where I was like,
yeah, I think especially in in Robert's Rebellion, he was just vibing. He was like, okay, I'm not gonna lose my men and food, so I'm gonna sit here and do whatever you want. And in the end, he went home. Easy as that. Why send people at the Trident?
Yeah, no. So I like that idea that Mace is playing the mellowest game of 4D chess ever, where he's like, you know what? If I just siege this castle forever, someone will win. I'll still have an army, and we'll all make peace. You know. My thought was that I did actually think that he's kind of a dummy and that he just doesn't know how to conduct a siege. Because my thought was that if Mace was truly smart, you know, it was that he would besiege Storm. You don't even need to besiege Storm's End, number one, really. You kind of just need to invest the castle with just enough men to keep it, like, from them from sallying out and rallying up other men and attacking you in the rear. And then he could have marched his men up and decided the war right away, and then had a big-ass army next to King's Landing. And I was like, I think Mace is dumb, and he's just underplaying his hand. But I did like the idea that Mace is smart and therefore underplaying his hand so as to keep himself out of the war. You know, so two very different takes on Mace. You know, based on the exact same incident.
Mace was smart. In general, he's not the sharpest tool in the set, not gonna lie. Olena is doing the real shit there.
Yes, I'm curious, Arthurian, what's your take on Mace? Since you have a medieval historian background, you probably maybe know even a couple of parallels to that.
I have the lukewarmest take on Mace that he's just fine. Like like I mean, again, like everyone tends to think either like going back to the siege, like either he's really dumb and doesn't know how to do a siege, like you were saying, or he's super smart playing this 4D chess. Whereas, like, if you weren't incredibly dumb, but you also weren't smart enough to be a little finger plotter, like that's the perfect like mid-tier strategy of I'm just not going to piss anyone off. People will say I did my part, but like I don't want to deal with this. I'll just look busy. Like that's the perfect, like, not a schemer, but also like not dumb. Like if you were just the average guy, like that's the strategy you would do. I think, he's just kind of there. He's just sort of vibing. He's not as dumb as people says, but he's also not the 4D chess some theories play. He's just sort of around. He is, the standard lord. He is, he's just, if a lord was doing stuff, that's just kind of what you would do. Like if you weren't a big schemer, if you weren't, super obsessed with honor, if you were just the standard lord, what's your plan? Basically what Mace does. Like he's just the most typical lord.
He didn't have stakes at all, so why interfere more? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Mace does field such a powerful army that no one's going to necessarily attack him one way or the other. At the end of the war, they're all going to be in a kind of fucked up position, so they're just going to kind of deal with whatever he did, and if he's just chilling, that's like, it's a pretty good strategy.
Oh, I will say what I don't want to see in wins.
Oh, okay.
If someone burns the food on the Reach, I'm gonna flip.
Oh, if someone burns all
it's the only place in Westeros that they have food.
Yeah, no, there's definitely going to be some famining going on. Like we already see Littlefinger kind of orchestrating some famining, with the intention of profiting off it. So yeah, I'm like, I think that what'll happen, arguably, is they'll exhaust all the food from the Reach, and the Reach will get stingy on the food, because like, they already gave so much to King's Landing, and then what'll happen is the whole rest of the country is going to be like, hey man, the Riverlands crops were burned and destroyed for huge portions of them. We need some food, and then that's going to create a conflict, where it's like there's just not going to be enough, and it'll be people fighting to keep the food in the Reach, or that might even be a factor that splits Tyrell loyalty to whoever they're serving. If whoever they're allied with asks them to send food somewhere else, they don't have any left.
Yeah, food is gonna be a huge problem.
Yeah, it's certainly
all over Westeros. They already have a problem in the north.
Yeah, no, there already is food issues, and it's like the winter hasn't even begun yet. And winters last years and years and years and years in this universe. Like, fuck, dude.
The only person in the north that has food is it's Manderleys, I think, at least.
Yeah, the Manderleys. So, interestingly enough, the Manderleys also have the ability to mint silver, and I believe they control some silver mining, which that may be a massive saving grace for the north, because like Jon's buying food. I don't know how much. Jon's trying to buy food from the free cities and stuff, and I was like, I kind of wonder if maybe the north will be able to purchase food outside of Westeros, because like there's gonna be starvation, but yeah, obviously people are gonna have to be stopping people from starving some way or another. Like Sansa may be seen as a legitimate leader in some senses, because she might not just bring fresh armed forces, she also might bring food from the Vale, depending on if Littlefinger, how far along the lines their plans get with Littlefinger in charge of the helm before she takes over.
I'm not sure how much Sansa is gonna stay in the Vale, though.
No, I think she's leaving
I
the Vale.
think
I think they're leaving the Vale.
I think they're gonna smuggle her in the Three Sisters and then the North.
Yeah. Okay. So you think that she's not, and I kind of had the feeling that she would potentially leave the Vale a different direction. Like, this is loosely based on a thought that Preston had a long time ago, where he talked about how political like forces and military forces are pulling the forces of the Vale towards the Riverlands, and how the Littlefinger story trends towards Harrenhal, and how all the other stories are trending towards the Riverlands. And so I thought that she would trend Riverlands first and then trend north. But if she just goes straight to the north, yeah, she's not going to be involved in any of that shit for a lot longer.
Yeah, I was thinking that there is this quote from Patchface that they say that crabs are serving stuff to their manderlies.
Mm-hmm.
And we have two guys or three, I don't remember how many they are, from the Three Sisters, that they went for the tourney and they don't even know how to ride the horse. And we already know that the Three Sisters with the Manderleys, they do trading all the time. There are boats going all the time in between these places. I think they're gonna smuggle Sansa.
That would be,
I'm not sure.
That would be interesting. She does talk about the Sistermen a lot too. They just come up in her chapters, so it's like certainly them as an element.
They're there. They are there all the time, and how the hell are gonna compete in the tourney at the Vale? They don't even know how to ride horses. What are they doing?
I do believe they certainly are going to attempt to compete, because the Lord who meets Davos says that he's watched the other Lord
they are gonna attempt
whittle all his money away. But I like the idea that they're better fighters than horse riders, and if fighting goes down in the Vale, that they are on the team that takes Sam. That's a fun idea,
And
that would certainly be
and there is also the cloak.
Yeah.
That the one lady that was married from the Starks had there, so she can take the Stark cloak too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
I don't remember.
So there's definitely a couple different directions. Like, you can make several different good arguments about what the current situation foreshadows. So, like, Martin has a couple fun ways you could take the story.
Yeah.
New question, really quick here. So this is it came in like several parts. Bran Stark says Lord Rickard was beheaded. Jaime says Rickard was burned alive by Aerys, but all he saw was a man in armor being burned. That man had golden spurs of a knight. Lord Hightower acts really weird after the burning. Was that Lord Stark with golden spurs, or was that a random person being burned? Like, should we take, basically what they're saying is, should we take the description and the conflicting stories as evidence that, perhaps there was not really a killing of Lord Stark? I don't tend to think that. I think that there's a lot of times people read into like little inconsistencies in George R. R. Martin's early writings, especially when he had was doing the initial gardening of the story, and they're like, Renly's eye color doesn't match here. It says it means something. It's like, or it doesn't, or it means the author was being careless as they were crafting the beginning of their story and getting it all onto its feet. And I'm not a big fan of like most of the theories that say someone is actually someone else. I think some are fun, but like the overwhelming majority,
I don't like them at all. They're my villain origin story.
Coming to the Cat hates that fucking shit, and we've talked about that before.
Why? What is the point story-wise? Like, okay, we're in the 5th book, and already we have people saying that 25 characters are not who they say they are. Okay, and what? Yeah,
there's like this most of the this person is this person is that person stuff has a lot of like fun but no payoff, or like no, this just means nothing. So it's like, no, I don't think George is, I don't think he's faking us out a million times just for no reason. What
about the eyes, at least?
Yeah, what about you, Arthur?
As you said about the eyes.
Oh, you're saying about the eyes at least?
Yeah, the eyes, many times the only colors that they are described differently are green eyes and blue eyes and gray eyes. And it's always when they are wearing different stuff, because there were a lot of people were saying about Renly, oh, he doesn't have blue eyes, and there he says green. Yeah, but see, Sansa said green the time that he was wearing the whole green armor. Eyes tend to look like that on the light. It depends on the light, so it doesn't really matter, especially with blue, gray, and green eyes.
Yeah,
this is it.
you could even make a good argument that that's not actually even an eye color change. What about you, Arthurian? Do you have an opinion on the gold Starks on? Because like I think the gold spurs on Stark are just like he just hadn't made the rules for the universe yet entirely in his head, and so he was like, oh, Lord Stark's a lord, he's got gold spurs, but later on he would call gold spurs a specifically like Faith of the Seven knightly tradition thing.
It's I think like out of universe, that's probably the best explanation. It just was before he made those rules, at least for the for the Spurs. But I would say even in universe, like, okay, that's a Faith of the Seven knightly thing. But again, like the Starks, at least at this time, it's not until our current batch of kids that the Starks do follow the Faith of the Seven. And as far as I'm aware, there's not like huge Faith of the Seven up in the north anyways. So it's like, would he care that that's theoretically a Faith of the Seven knightly tradition? Because like, yeah, the faith, if you're in the Faith of the Seven, that might be considered disrespectful to pretend you've taken these vows. But like, if you went to if you went to like the middle of Afghanistan or something, and it wouldn't be shocking that people aren't following strict Catholic traditions or something, like, oh, he's doing something he probably shouldn't be according to the Faith of the Seven. Well, he doesn't listen to the Faith of the Seven. Why does it matter to him that he's doing something the faith says he shouldn't?
Yeah, so he could just be putting golden spurs on because he likes golden spurs. That's also in universe. Yeah, I think is a perfectly valid justification. Just, well, Lord Stark's a lord. He's rich. He just had gold spurs, and then also knights like gold spurs. It just happens to be the same thing. As opposed to as opposed to it meaning something in depth. But mostly like my biggest reason for that would be that I'm kind of with Company of the Cat. I think that there's so many of the times people are like, oh, this person's that person, and I'm like, well, except that Mance is just Mance, and that's like Mance is his own character, and Mance is a cool character, and he's part of the story, and it's like that's, and like it's like it almost is like a we just had too much time on our hands, and so everyone's a different character.
Yeah, also we talked about it in the video that we had recorded, that he doesn't do that very often. The people that they are hidden, they are not actually hidden. The reader knows who they are.
Yeah, exactly. They're intentionally
we are talking about, we know it's Hound. Like, we know it's a dude that is okay with his hood on. We don't see his face, and he has fucking stranger.
Yeah. That's like Hound. It's like it's the Hound. Yeah, it's like, come on, it's the Hound. It's not like a debatable secret. Okay. It's just like a secret,
They tried to hide young Reef and John Connington, but we know that it's John Connington. It's not like we don't know who he is.
Yeah, I know. He's come
it's
before.
Really, I don't know. I don't like this theory at all. I got a pet peeve against them. I really don't like them because they don't serve anything story-wise. Like, it's such a lazy writing to do that and be like, I got you. They are not brothers, they are cousins because it's that person.
Yeah.
So what? I don't care.
No, yeah, I know. I think that a lot of the times that people will be like, oh, well, that's debatable. I'm like, is the Hound debatably the Gravedigger, or is that an obvious thing where it's like he's trying to make it like the characters in the book don't know, but you, the reader, see Stranger. We know who Stranger is. We've seen Stranger before.
Yeah. We have seen Stranger, and that he doesn't like other people.
Yeah, we met Stranger. We know who this guy is. So new question. This one should be kind of fun. Will the Hightower survive Euron? Gosh, that's an interesting one. Like, the Hightower, the structure. Will Euron knock that motherfucker down? Hightower, the house. Will Euron kill all the Hightowers? Both those questions. Very interesting. I'm
Melisandre saw a tower on the sea falling. Just saying.
Okay, so
I don't know if it's about the Hightower, but it's there.
Yeah, I think that she also sees the 3 towers of House Castaigne burning, and Sam goes right by the 3
Yeah.
towers and goes, "The 3 towers! It's House Castaigne!" So that's, I would say, pretty good evidence. The High Tower could easily. Also, it's like just as like a weird thing. Like we keep hearing about the High Tower, the High Tower, the High Tower, the High, and it's like we never like really hear all that much about it. We're just told that there is a High Tower. And then, like, eventually, I think that the mind just kind of wants it to fall over. You know, like, you know.
I think we're gonna see more about from the Hightower at least.
What about the Citadel?
Also, something that we are gonna see more.
Do you think that will burn? They'll burn the Citadel down. Like,
I don't think that it's gonna burn down because. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that Euron would destroy something like that before, like, sees what is going on there. Because there is no way he's not aware. Yeah, obviously he's gonna search.
That actually would be a wonderful motivation for him invading Old Town if he is part of the way on his mission, but he's a little bit less far along than he'd like us all to think, and he kind of needs to do some research, but like they're not going to share this.
Both in the Citadel and the High Tower. He definitely wants them. He definitely wants them.
Yeah, so I wonder. Yeah, Arthurian too, or the chat. Either you guys, feel free to chime in if there's anything that you think that Euron is looking for in the High Tower, in those places, you know, in the Citadel. Oh, Flying Foam TV is here. Hey, what's going on? Feel free to ask questions in the chat. Anybody, if you or drop some hints. And what do you guys think? You know, like, is there anything that he's after for his plans in Old Town?
I don't know. I think the glass candles are one of these.
Okay.
Also, the stuff we know there are in the vaults at the Citadel. We don't know what they are, but they sound important because all the thing that First Men didn't have written stuff. Like, what were they doing in the Citadel if they didn't have written stuff?
Yeah, yeah. There's gotta be secrets in there. There's got to be really interesting secrets. Yeah, Peter Windhorst said, I would say some book that'll make him a god. Or pieces and elements of things that will get him on his way to that place.
Yeah.
I think that's highly likely that there is essential oils that Euron desperately wants on his persons in Old Town.
There are people there that they are studying magic. They say that they don't believe in it, but they sure have mystic studies. So they do have magical stuff in there.
Yeah, Euron also likes to torture and fuck with, like, you know, researchers and holy people and stuff like that. So, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he was gonna, like, you know, unleash his wonderful Euron behavior on all of the people in the Starry Sept and in the Citadel itself.
I think Euron would definitely be more. I think he's definitely more interested in the Citadel than the High Tower. So I would wonder how much the High Tower was George sort of more priming people for, like, fire and blood, where the High Tower is kind of actually magic. Just like, hey, I'm going to drop references to this thing I'm going to drop.
There's
the High Tower has the underground.
The High Tower has what now, though?
The High Tower has the underground, though. We don't know what is going on down there, but all the undergrounds are very weird.
Yeah, no,
they seem to see stuff when they are going in there.
My question was, is the High Tower and the Starry Sept and the Citadel all connected underground? And then also, what is Leighton Hightower studying at the top of the tower? And would Euron want to get that first before he knocked the tower down?
For some reason, Leighton and Malora are studying hard in there.
Yeah, they're reading spells.
They are searching for something.
They're reading like spell text.
Protecting spells.
Yeah, it's like spell text.
But something else is going on.
So that makes me wonder if Euron is trying to get his greasy hands on all of that. You know what I mean? Like if there's stuff in both locations that he wants to get his hands on. Arthur, were you trying to say something about what was there in Old Town?
Not really. I'm just my thought is, again, just because so much of stuff has come out again away from the main books, particularly Fire and Blood, and the Hightower's, the house, more so than the structure itself, is very important there. How much of it is actually foreshadowing for what's going to happen in our main A Song of Ice and Fire stuff versus him just sort of universe building for those other books. The High Towers are going to be important in a few years when I release Fire and Blood, speaking of from back when he was writing these books. So I'll include it now, and then fans can be like, oh, that's the thing. But instead of happening in the mainline books, that was the reaction we were supposed to get reading Fire and Blood.
Okay. That is an interesting take. And I do kind of agree with you. I think that there's a likelihood that what he's after is in the Citadel and not the High Tower. That's why he'll probably knock the High Tower over, because, like, fuck the High Tower, but we need to go through the Citadel and comb that shit with a fine-tooth comb. And then I had a weird thought just now, as you were saying all that. So Roger the Reader has, like, a ton of fucking ancient texts and shit. And it makes me wonder why Euron never pillaged 10 Towers. Because I'm like, fuck, like, why wouldn't you? So he must be after something incredibly specific. Like, this is my extrapolation. Because if he thought he's looking for something so, rare that it wouldn't be at 10 Towers, maybe he's looking for the same book that Jaqen H'ghar was looking for. Arguably. People have argued that Jaqen H'ghar is looking for that dragon book in the basement of the Citadel. Like Ruben said here in the chat, he says, maybe some info on dragons. That's like we there's a pretty big argument that Jaqen H'ghar was trying to get the dragon book so that he could talk dragon nonsense to Archmaester Marwyn, and it kind of makes me wonder if Euron is after something hyper specific that he knows it exists in X location. Like, he's like, that book is there.
It could be hyper specific. Also, it could be a lot of stuff, not just one, because we are told that there are many artifacts and books at the Citadel.
Yeah, true.
So he's gonna go there and he's like, okay, I want this, and this. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he has a few already. Maybe he's got a few on his person and he's looking to pick up an extra 3 or 4 to kind of make a more complete puzzle or something.
Also, Roderick's books, yeah, there are a lot and they're very, very old, but I don't think they are that, like, deep into magic or something.
They're more historical texts or stuff, yeah.
They're historical stuff, and also maybe some healing and other stuff, because they didn't have maesters at the Iron Islands or something similar.
Side tangent, but Roger the Reader was such a cool character. I love that guy. And he just disses Euron to his face. Euron's like, I've been to Valyria, and Roger the Reader's just like, have you now? Yeah, is that true? You really been to Valyria? And Euron just says nothing. He just looks pissed. And I was like, that's right, Euron, suck it. Old man Reader. Okay, so new question. Let's take a look at a brand new one here. Will Ashai appear in the main series? If so, will it be Dany or something completely different, like a Shadowbringer prologue? I think Martin has said Ashai will never be seen, but as Arthurian pointed out, he doesn't really give a fuck what he says and just will do what he feels like. So I've always kind of wondered, but I feel like Ashai is like Avalon, if you guys read The Thousand Worlds, it's that place that we're never going to get to go see. And maybe he even planned to write a book about it one day, but I don't think he's going to get around to it. I don't think we got time to go to Ashai, personally.
I'm not sure if I don't think we will see Asai, to be honest, but I do think that we will learn more stuff about Asai, probably by glass candles.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of them, and they are setting them since, which was Feast. Since Feast, they are setting them up, so we will use them for something, I think.
Really quick here, just a side backtrack. So Sean Bartlett says, is the High Tower not one of the great fortresses akin to Storm's End? How easily would it be for some raiders to raise it to the ground? So I have two feelings on this. Yes, it is an ancient structure, arguably like an architectural masterpiece, but it is considerably easy to knock over a bunch of Legos stacked on top of each other in a super tall straight line than it is to knock down a fortified concaved wall that's built like how we build dams, so they're made to resist pressures that are being applied externally. I think the High Tower comes down with way easier effort. I'm not an engineer. Don't fucking, maybe I'm wrong. I'm an idiot. Who knows? But I think the High Tower, just physically speaking, comes down a lot easier than Storm's End. And so
I think that if they are gonna go to the underground, there is probably the possibility that there could go up.
Yeah, blow it up.
From the
That was
underground.
exactly my other thought
So-
was they can use explosives underneath the Hightower to Tower of the Hand the Hightower. Or Tower of Joy
Like,
the
I think-
Hightower, if you believe in that theory.
I have thoughts about Tower of Joy, but
Do
I
they
will
do
not
they
talk about
involve
it.
do they involve wildfire and burning everyone in the Tower of Joy
No.
alive? Because I've
No.
heard that and I
No.
thought that was
They
fun.
involve Howland.
They involve what now?
They involve Howland.
Oh, okay. So what do you think? Do you think Howland moved the Tower of Joy to the ground with his moving power magic?
I think that he did something because the only thing that Mira told us was that he could run on leaves and that he could breathe water and that he could make castles appear and disappear. And I know that a lot of people say it's about the neck, but in the neck they don't have castles. It's Cranogs. They are not castles. We are told specifically that they don't call them castles. So what kind of castles he can make appear and disappear?
So this is where I want to hear Arthurian weigh in because one of his Game of Thrones theories is about how Greywater Watch doesn't move.
I just don't think it's that magical. I also don't think like just that level of magic. I don't think has happened in the story. Like unless we're believing the sort of children of the forest during the first Men invasions. Like we've never seen anyone use magic enough to just destroy a structure. And I feel like that magic, at least without doing something dramatic, like the fan theories about Euron just murdering entire armies as part of a blood sacrifice. Like I don't know if people could just like pull off that level of magic.
They
So I think
certainly can. Melisandre can, and she's one person. We just haven't seen it.
Yeah, I see. I would push back on the Mel thing because Mel tells us herself that she's more charlatan than capable user, and she claims to be like one of the most powerful people in her order. So
but
we
have a person in the Ritz that was resurrected more than once.
Yeah, but I would still say that
Magic
that's a
can
lot
do
different
some serious
than
shit.
that's a lot different than blowing up a building. So I think that it's more like one has more to do with like human essence and like consciousness and like like putting a consciousness back into a dead body is like considerably different just on every mechanical level than like blowing a building up. And that's kind of why I'm like,
yes, but when they say that he can turn, and this one was told by many people and not only about Howland, that they can turn ground and earth to water and some other things like that, and Roiners were doing the same thing. It is possible. We just don't know how, and it's possibly not used anymore. Like
so
we are
do you
told
think
specifically.
do you think he could have eroded the base of the Tower of Joy and it fell over like that?
I think I think that happened, to be honest. I don't know.
That's interesting because like I do tend to agree with the theory that I'm like, I just don't think we've seen that level of magic. We have heard of that level of magic described though. We've heard reference the breaking of the Arm of Dorne and stuff like that. So I mean it's certainly.
I agree with the chat on that. The Greywater Watch is just Cranogs and floating structures, but they are not castles.
Yeah, and that was kind of my interpretation too. Was when I very first heard about it, I was like, are they just like floating houses? But so Arthurian had a very interesting interpretation of Greywater Watch. So that's why I was curious what you had to say about that. Did you have any other thoughts, Arthurian, on the whole Howland Reed idea, or the idea that we could bring down the Hightower or the Tower of Joy with either magic or explosives or something like that?
I do kind of generally more vibe with the Tower of Joy just kind of exploded from more mundane means, like just assuming it has a tie to like the Targaryens, then yeah, it would make sense that there's just a bunch of wildfire around or something like that.
The thing is that people don't know where it is. If wildfire was used, it could be visible. It still would be visible. They would see destroyed castles and towers. This is the thing with the fire thing.
Oh, so you're saying that if they had used wildfire, there would be like an obvious like explosion site that he'd gonna go find?
There would be a burning site all around it, or it would be like there would be some evidence. Now we don't know where they are, and Ned wouldn't say where they are. And they couldn't find them.
Ned not telling us
it's like
anything.
it just vanished.
Ned not telling us anything really fucks us on that whole deal. So brand new question, because I just looked over at this question. This question made me fucking laugh a bit. If Stannis, at the end of A Dance with Dragons, gets a gun with 5 bullets, it won't jam, and somehow he knows how to use it, how does this change things? So Stannis has a revolver with 5 shots. He's got a 5-shot Japanese police revolver, and and it's guaranteed to work every time. What does he do with it? Feel free to answer in the chat too.
I really don't know, because it's Stannis.
I kind of feel like it wouldn't change too much, which I know is a boring take, but like theoretically it would be useful for like assassinating people, because you can be pretty accurate from far away, which
pretty guaranteed.
I don't know if Stannis would. Yeah, which I don't know if Stannis would use. Like, I know he sort of does the shadow babies. But we can sort of argue that, that's a degree of separation. He goes to Mel and is like, all right, you're going to do some magic stuff. Don't tell me. Like, he can arguably, distance himself from the shadow baby murders. Whereas I don't know if his honor would let him do something as direct as, here's a revolver, go shoot that guy in the head. And then if we're imagining him using it in combat, like, I don't know how useful it would be. Like, guns are better than swords. Hot take, I know. But if you only have 5 shots, it's not like he can take on an army or anything.
Yeah, it's almost worthless. So I have an interesting hot take on this. So there's a theory that, I don't remember if I read it or if I thought it up or something, but I could have sworn I saw it somewhere and it wasn't just my idea. I know someone's got to have said this before. Ramses does a disguise to lop off the hand of Castellan of Winterfell, it's basically on his name, when he, goes to meet up with him, thinking that he's not Ramses. He, is in disguise, and he's like, nice to see you, too, and he fucking cuts his hand off with his big old clunky sword. So I had this thought that they all go forth to the Battle of Ice, and, like I said, maybe this is a theory, I don't know, whatever. But they go to the Battle of Ice, Ramses' forces lose the Battle of Ice, Ramses survives, he's not looking like Ramses, no one knows he looks like, and he tries to kill Stannis. So if some wacky, Ramses bullshit like that went down, and Stannis's persons was threatened by an individual, or if there was somebody rides through, one of the Bolton commanders or one of the Bolton fighters rides through Stannis's lines to kill him, and Stannis just has a Glock on his persons, he's just got the gat in hand, I feel like, yeah, okay, that makes a difference. Yeah, now he kills someone who would have killed him. But kind of like Arthurian said, you only got 5 shots, so it's either going to count one time, or it's just, there's just not enough that's going to matter. And either way, I don't know that one thing could change Stannis's predicament, even one thing as big as thwarting a single assassination. He probably would still end up losing and getting killed and yada yada yada. And yeah, it's not enough bullets to stop an army, so I don't know. What about Company of the Cat? Stannis has a gun. Does that change things?
I don't know. I really don't. It's 5 bullets only.
Yeah, it's
yeah, I don't think that anything's gonna change.
I mean, if they were belt-fed machine gun, 500 rounds of ammo, you could scare a lot of armies away with 50 bullets.
No, except if you could find specifically go and take people like Roose and find all of them and kill them. But it's not like Arya was asked, say, 3 names. They have to be around there.
Yeah.
So I don't think that something would change.
So yeah, not 1 gun, 5 bullets, not enough to affect Stannis. All right. Lyanna was fond of flowers. Could that be a reference to poppies? I thought it was roses she was fond of, but is poppies a reference from another literary work, and I'm not getting that?
I don't know. We're gonna find out right away.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Because I have no idea what is this.
Poppies obviously
The poem?
obviously in the story
I don't-
make milk of the poppy, but I don't know what that would have to do with Lyanna. Arthurian, do you have any thoughts, Lyanna, in relation to poppies?
Not that I can think of. Again, I'm sort of with you. As far as I'm aware, the only flowers that come up a lot in terms of Lyanna is the blue roses. Uh, I imagine there might be something I'm missing because I know I that's not one of those things I've dug into. Or I know like poppy, like again out of universe in like real life, poppies are big on like Veterans Day equivalents abroad. Like Remembrance Day and like the UK and Canada and stuff like that. But again, I can't think off the top of my head how that would come into play too much.
Okay. So yeah,
I don't know.
not a lot of great answers on the poppies.
It is something that we don't get. Maybe it's a reference from something and we don't get it. I don't know.
Okay. Well, if you find anything in a Google search, let me know. We can always come back to it. But
Yeah,
here in the meantime, another Mace Tyrell question, it's actually broadly Tyrells, but it says which of the big 5 Tyrells, Mace the Ace and his 4 children, do you give the best chance of surviving a Dream of Spring? I almost said a Dance with Spring. It's not a Dance with Spring. It's a Dream of Spring. So of Mace and his 4 kids, who do we think is living to the end?
I would say Wireless has a big chance, I think.
Yeah, Willis Tyrell, I'm given the odds to. I think that Willis, stays in.
Garland is a very good fighter, but he is also a fighter, so we can never be sure.
Yeah, Loras dead. Marjorie dead, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Garland, yeah, probably dead. Like I think it's like
Garland, I would give a 50-50. I'm not sure. Wireless though, I don't know.
Yeah, Willis Tyrell is that's the guy I say if any of them are living, that's my best chance of survival is Willis. So what about you, Arthurian? Do you have a best chance of survival for any of these Tyrells? Or is House Tyrell doomed? Is the rose to be plucked?
I think they're more or less doomed. At least the main branch that we've been following.
Yeah.
Like it might go out to some vaguely related house where we don't know any named characters for. But yeah, I think the main branch of the Tyrells that we know are kind of done. Unless you follow the like theories that Loras isn't actually the guy slowly dying from oil burns. Which I suppose is possible. But I think unless we're going one of those routes, yeah, they're just sort of done.
Yeah. I wasn't like, see, yeah, you could argue there's aspects of the Loras thing that we're suspicious or whatever, but when I watched like Preston had a brief thing about it, and he was like, one of the points he made was, if Loras was a horse, shouldn't his sleighs have been down? But Queen Cersei says he was slaying right and left. And I'm like, no, that's how people talk. Like, if Loras was fighting on a horse, yeah, he's swinging his Morningstar or his sword downward, arguably, unless he's fighting someone else on a horse, which I don't know why. But, okay, so but people would describe that as, oh, he was slaying left and right. It's just like a turn of phrase. And I'm like, I think people are like that particular reading, I thought was too deep. And so I think that, yeah, you're probably arguing too deep if you're trying to make Loras come back to life, but weirder things have happened, maybe, arguably.
I doubt it. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that we're probably all on the Willis train here. If none of us are big Loras or Alivers, then I think we're all on the Willis train.
Yeah.
Willis Tyrell, most likely to live to the end. That's pretty fair.
He's not gonna be on battlefield, so if the Ironborn don't go there, he has a good chance, I think.
Yeah, as long as Highgarden isn't put directly to siege, he's got a pretty good chance. And then who knows? I mean, he could even abandon Highgarden and flee and just appear at the end of the series and be like, well, he was driven from Highgarden, but he was still alive, and so by the time everything settled in Dream, he got his castle back or whatever.
Do we have anyone that has a limb so we could say that he is Wyla Tyrell?
Say again?
Do we know anyone with a limb or something? So we can say that he's Wyla.
So he's Clubfoot Call is actually Willis Tyrell, same guy. Clubfoot Call, Willis Tyrell, same one.
Confirm.
Also,
First here.
Mullender or whatever it was, or one of the acolytes drinking has a limp. One of the acolytes drinking in the prologue of Feast of Crows. That's secretly Willis Tyrell. Mullender Tyrell. That's the new theory. I don't even know if his name is Mullender. I'm probably mixing it up, but yeah, one of the he's like a blacksmith's son or something like that. All right, so would Alicent? So this is a blood and fire question, fire and blood question. Would Alicent's male children be doomed if Rhaenyra and Daemon became queen and king consort peacefully, as in no council or Aegon coronation? If not, what would their positions be? I think it all depends. There was several marriage propositions between the two branches of the house.
Yeah.
So I feel like it all depends on how that goes down. If this is 100% Daemon is in charge of the entire orchestration of all events and no one ever says no to him, yeah, probably wouldn't be looking out for Alicent's children. I would be looking for them to disappear. But if this is well organized by perhaps the previous king, by like Viserys, and if this is like part of the peaceful transition of power and the two branches are bound together in marriages, no, I think that's totally, there's no reason at that point for random crazy vengeful violence within the house. Like, they could have stitched that thing together.
Yeah, Aegon didn't really care about the throne. He had his Homelander moment when people start clapping. Until then, he was not very into the idea of becoming a king. First of all. Second,
really quick, Andi brought something up in the chat. If you want to look in the chat to correct who Mullender is, Andi remembered. Sorry, come to the cat. You were saying
that Aegon didn't really care about being a king. So I don't think the Homelander moment for him was when people started clapping.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh my God, they love me.
The Homelander moment.
It was the same scene. Dude, yeah. It was the same scene. Yeah. He even has a smile. He even had the smile. It was the same scene. Yeah. But this is where, at least as far as we see in House of the Dragon, but if this is true, he didn't really care about the throne. So only Aemond probably would have maybe some problem, but if people like respected him or anything like that, and they addressed the whole I thing, I don't think he would have a big problem either.
Yeah, I think there could have been peace made.
It's. I think we also have to question how Targaryen centric are we talking in this theoretical? Because like, could theoretically, if it's just House Targaryen, Alicent and her kids plus our queen there, they could make peace, sure, but like we even have in the story the queen that never was, and she's the queen. Like, I imagine that even if Alicent's kids themselves aren't doing anything, I think there's a lot of lords that would be sort of do the equivalent for the king who never was. Like, I don't know how much they would be happy.
Okay.
Even if House Targaryen themselves are.
They were respectful towards Rhaenys. People were like, okay, it's Rhaenys. And this is why she was the queen that never was. If Aegon was the way that we know he is, people wouldn't care about him. We already told that when Rhaenyra, in Fire and Blood, when Rhaenyra took the city, they were happy at first. They had problem with the taxes after, but at first they were like, okay, the asshole is gone.
So you think that
Aegon we know he's the asshole support because he's king. If he's never king, then he's just the alternative to the woman that we might have had.
He was not a good guy. People knew that it was not a good guy, especially in Flea Bottom. It was common knowledge even before he was a king.
Yeah, so I can see him having little popular support. I can see him having little popular support either way. Like the people would never endorse the king that never was. But I could see Arthurian's point that there might be lords who like people argue that Daemon Blackfyre was lured into the idea of rebellion over time by Bittersteel and Quentin Ball, and there's probably an argument that Aegon could be made susceptible to a rebellious cause over time from lords who had something to gain, who didn't give a shit if he was a good king or not, who just like are like, well, if this guy's king and I'm now the hand of the king, then my money is looking good. So I can see.
I don't think we need to question if he could be talked into a rebellion, at least not too hard. I mean, again, going back to sort of what we've been saying, he didn't want to be king until he got I guess not talked into it, but cheered into it. I'm sure if you got enough lords saying, oh, who should be king, like again, it'll be the same thing like the crowd. If he's put into a rebellion small council where there's just 16 lords huddled around being like, you should be king, that should be your throne, King Aegon, let's go. I think the alternate universe is we end up with the second equivalent of a Blackfire.
Yeah, I will say that likely my question against that would be if the transition of power is very peaceful and solidified and well conducted from from Viserys' time, and these are people raised to be together, and how strong is that alliance of House Targaryens against infiltration from rebel lords? Like, would things ever be at a position where it would be not likely, like even if those lords were out there, not likely that they could coalesce enough power to lure him in? Like, would there, or do you think that guaranteed there's enough power latently sitting out there that would be able to act even against a strong unified dynasty?
If it happens before the king's death, I could see it solid.
Okay.
Like again, if Viserys is laying the groundwork before he died, and particularly if towards his deathbed he basically does, all right, allegiance to Rhaenyra Part 2, everyone come back and promise again. Sort of that problem of, all the lords who swore that she was the heir, died by the time shit hit the fan. If he was like, all right, it's been 16 years, we're doing this again before I bounce to the afterlife. Like, then I could see, then it's if you get everyone on board early, then I could see peace.
Sorry, come to the cat. You were saying something a minute ago?
I think that the only way to be like completely peaceful, it was either listen to Otto and marry Rhaenyra to Aegon, even if they had a big age gap, or from the start, like very early on, marry Daemon and Rhaenyra, because before Aegon, Daemon was his successor.
Yeah, and I tend to lean, like I said, on the idea that if Viserys had been the one orchestrating it, either way, like you're saying, if he had orchestrated strong marriage alliances between numerous people, if possible, on both sides of the house, and then like Arthurian was saying, basically prep the kingdom for this, that the likelihood of there'd still be lords out there trying to make Aegon king, but would they coalesce the power to convince him to start a rebellion? Maybe not. Versus like, if the king dies and then somehow the blacks and the greens make amends and they cobble it together, I don't know, maybe enough latent power out there in the kingdom that can organize itself that can then convince Aegon, that can give him they can Homelander pill him, I love that analogy, the Homeland, because you're right, it's the same. It is the same scene. It is so similar.
It is the same.
So totally different part of the realm. This is a technical question that I just don't know the answer to. Who is the Seneschal of Sunspear? Does anyone know? Chat, do you know who the Seneschal of Sunspear is? Andi, where's Andi? Andi said he just came back from a different server. Andi, who is the Seneschal of Sunspear?
I don't know. Do we know?
I have no idea. It's probably listed in appendices. It's probably in appendices somewhere.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we were just talking about this. So I don't know if there were any other thoughts on this too. Someone literally asked what happened at the Tower of Joy. Who was there? Who died? Who fought? Why were the tensions escalated when they could have maybe talked it out? Which babies were there? And was there wildfire or a dragon's egg?
We do not know. That's the thing. That's my answer.
Yeah, I personally, I have a theory video about this that I kind of want to remake, because I thought about even one or two little more tidbits of evidence that go along with it. I think that the battle happened. I'm a believer that the 7 did fight the 3 and that everyone got murked, and then Ned was in a desperate situation, and I think Howland saved him. And I think he saved him by the same methodology of fighting that Mira uses to fight, which is a fishing net. But, you could argue that. So here's an interesting one. This is the one that I hear most debated about the Tower of Joy. The question I get the most, or the response I get the most, was like, don't you think they would have all just been able to talk it out? And so I would field that question to you two guys, Arthurian and Company of the Cat. Do you believe in the idea that, like, maybe they might have talked, or that there even was room for talking that far down the road? Like, what's your guys' thoughts on that?
If Jon was born there, let's start with that.
Okay.
Then both the guards and Ned wanted the best for the kid. That's for sure. Like, there is no way, because it makes sense the guard to protect Lyanna if Lyanna was pregnant.
Yeah, and I almost lean on the idea. I lean on more on the idea that the guards were there to keep her there, which is why there's like 3 guards as opposed to like,
I don't. Personally, I think it's almost canon at this point that Jon is a Targaryen. I know that there are people that they don't. They still have like other theories about his mother and parents in general. And I personally think it's that there is a reason why the Lyanna and Rhaegar equals Jon is the oldest theory in the books. The oldest.
So if we accept that Jon is the baby, you're saying that there would be plenty of reason for compromise, and they would want to talk it out.
Yes, that's the thing, that we do not know if the baby was there or not, because if it was, this is the scene changes completely.
So my question would be, like what if the guards' orders to protect the baby hadn't been updated, and their orders were just no one enters the tower, and that Rhaegar was dead, couldn't tell him to let Ned in, and Ned showed up and was like, "Hey man, we're on the same team. Let us in." And they're just like, "Bro, we took orders not to let you. Like, you can try to come inside, but we're not going to let you."
Yeah, I don't know if Lyanna said something about Ned and wanted him there. I think there is a possibility they let him.
Yeah.
But everything changes if the baby was there or not. If there was a baby or not.
So yeah, because one of my this is like the same lines, and I want to ask this question to Arthurian because you also do medieval sports. People always bring up this idea. Well, what if Lyanna or Howland or somebody? What if somebody tried to yell at them in the middle of a battle, or what if someone tried to yell down from the tower? And I'm like, man, these dudes are putting helmets on, bro. Like, how loud? How loud are you yelling? How loud are you yelling? Like, have you ever been in a helmet when swords are flying at you? You're not really hearing. That's why marshals use like 8-foot flags with yellow poles on them, like, or 8-foot yellow poles with flags on them. Like, it's hard to hear. And if a battle started, like, I feel like even if someone were to intervene. So I have all these weird reasons why I'm a believer in the battle, but Arthurian,
Lyanna couldn't shout in general; she was dying.
Yeah, that too. But people have also said, what about a midwife? What if a midwife yelled down and said, and asked them to stop?
Though it could be possible.
Yeah,
if the midwife came down and was like, "Hey guys, she's dying over there."
Yeah. So the other thing I would say is, if swords have been drawn, like if swords are in fact flying at each other, which is what Ned seems to believe happened, the thing becomes, do you stop when you know the other person will take any advantage, the slightest lapse in momentary judgment, to murder you? And I would say no swordsman in a life or death, actual real life sword fight puts down their sword unless the opponent puts theirs down first. Like, if Ned dropped his sword, maybe the Kingsguard take a half second to blink. But if neither side chooses to do that first, and I don't think they would because of the fear of life or death, that fight's going to continue until people are just dead. Like, it's just going to be just because of the very nature of what swords are when they're being used against other human beings. No one knowing the power of another human being with a sword who knows how to use it would stop. They would rather wound you. They would rather wound you. If the baby was there or not. Yeah. So Arthur, what do you have to say?
For that is because if the midwife came down and she was like, the baby is not okay, or the mother is not okay, and there is a possibility that the baby's gonna die, all of them, guards and Ned, would be like, okay, stop, because we all want the baby to be okay.
And I would argue if swords are out, we're past the point where we can stop. That either side would go, we can't stop.
My argument is, I don't think...
The baby. If the baby dies, We do too. So if that was their priority, there is always a possibility that God said, fuck that. We need to go to the king, prince, whatever.
Okay. Okay. So what were you saying, Arthur?
Well, my sort of argument against this is just why is the midwife coming out?
Yeah.
Like, and particularly if the pregnancy is going bad, the last option you want to do is, great, I'm going to peace out, go talk to those guys in the courtyard, none of whom know what to do during a childbirth. Like, no, if something is going bad, that's the best case for nobody's coming out to check with the guards. Like,
no,
pregnancy's going bad, great, let the guards swing swords, I'll deal with this.
Wait, so come to the cat.
But we don't know how many were in that freaking tower. It was a tower. There is no way it was only Lyanna and a midwife and 3 guards. There 100% they had a maester. There is no way Rhaegar left here if she was pregnant there without a maester. We are thinking about that, they were 5 people and they were just playing with their swords. We don't know how many they were there. There is a reason why they burned everything down.
Oh, so that's an interesting point. Is would Rhaegar have brought a maester? And then 100%. I would ask, do we have any evidence of who that maester might be?
We don't know. We don't know anything. That's why what I'm saying with the Tower of Joy, you need to think that 100 different possibilities, because we don't know.
No, so this is the Tower of Joy is such a great thing to argue about, because like I've heard so many arguments and I disagree with like all of them, but they're all interesting arguments, you know? There's a bunch of interesting points, because that is like we do see maesters at like every other royal childbirth practically. Like, would he have brought a maester? ? Before we move on,
obviously if there was a baby, there was always a maester, a midwife. Also, we cannot forget that with if there was a baby again, they went to freaking Starfall, and then they came back. So they had people with them. There is no possibility it was just one person. It was a tower. Someone had to run the tower.
Okay, no, that's an interesting argument. Arthur, did you have any other thoughts on this? And then we'll pick on your question.
My other ones is so we keep talking about how everyone wants what's best for the baby. And while I kind of agree, I also like, are they agreeing on what's the best for the baby? Like, assuming the baby's Jon, which as much as I enjoy the Jon isn't the tower baby theories, I kind of think they're like, I think they're more fun than we're probably going to get. But like sort of the obvious conclusion that we sort of need to accept as the right one until proven otherwise is, this is baby Jon. And we know that, Ned's best, what he thinks is best because he does it is we're going to pretend he's not a Targaryen and, let him hang out and live his best life up north. That's not something I imagine. Yeah, that's not something I imagine that the Kingsguard are going to be like, that's the best case. Like, they're going to be like, no, the royal baby stays with us, and we're going to keep him so he can take charge when we kill you and crush the rebellion.
What they're going to say. This is the thing, that if they say, the baby stays with us, stays where? Because if Lyanna said, no, I want him to go with Ned, then they're going to agree with her because she is their queen. This is what we don't get. Why do we think Lyanna was a doormat? Lyanna was Lyanna. If Lyanna was like, no, he's going to take the baby, they were like, okay, take the baby.
I don't think they're going to listen to Lyanna.
I wonder if
fighting,
would they view Lyanna as queen, or would they even know if a marriage had taken place, like, for sure? Like, Arthur Dayne, maybe should know, but, like, does Hightower know? Like, is Arthur Dayne privy to a secret marriage that Hightower doesn't know about? Like, what would you say about that?
It doesn't really matter, to be honest, if the marriage went or not, because if Arthur says, you know what, he told me that, or Rhaegar told them, you listen to Lyanna, they wouldn't question that. Why would they? They are the Kingsguard.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. If they were told by Rhaegar explicitly to take her orders, I can see that point. I guess I don't trust Rhaegar that much, and like I said, I still think there's a pretty solid argument for the idea that.
But Rhaegar wanted the kid safe, so I trust in that because he was obsessed with the kid being safe.
So weird parallel.
Yeah, but
in the
sort
Riverlands,
of going off of that.
Wait, real quick, if I may, in the Riverlands. Edmure Tully is told to hang out and guard River Run and just hold back, and he's given very vague orders. And he does the opposite of what Rob wanted him to do, and it fucks everything up, allegedly. So my question becomes, how well was it communicated?
Told him something.
So
they should have told him something.
Okay.
They should have.
Yeah, and I would go, maybe they did, maybe they didn't.
Like,
maybe the orders were too vague. Like, if Rhaegar just says keep the baby safe, that means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Which the other one is, okay, let's say there's a negotiation. Everyone agrees that, again, we want what's best for the baby. But that's sort of us as readers looking down from our sort of third person perspective of everything. Imagine you're Arthur Dayne or somebody. You're the Kingsguard, somebody, who is actively leading a rebellion which killed your lord, killed most of his family, and is actively trying to get rid of claimants to the throne, rolls up and is like, hey, I see your lord had a baby. We just killed your lord. You should give me the baby. We're totally not going to do anything sketchy. Do you believe, we know Ned is a respectable, honorable person, but if you're a guard and he comes and tries to take, who is now...
that Ned was an honorable person, though, and if Lyanna said that I trust my brother,
yeah,
I think that... Just that again, this is what these theories get on my nerves so much, and I don't talk about. People completely disregard Lyanna and Elia, both. They were people, and they were very much not doormats. So can we please, if Lyanna said that let Ned in, they would let him 100%.
I think what we're gonna do, I think we're gonna shelve this for right now, but we're gonna return. No, we're gonna return to this in a future stream. Yeah, we're gonna return this in a future stream because I think there are several different interpretations of Lyanna Stark, and of Elia, and of Rhaegar, and of the baby. There's all these different interpretations. Though this is a conversation that we should have because this is a huge conversation. But so for right now, just final thoughts. Come from the Cat thinks pretty good chance that people would listen if Lyanna spoke up and said stop the fighting. So pretty good chance the fighting could have been quelled. Versus Arthurian, you're saying kind of low chance the fighting could be quelled. I'm kind of in that boat too. I'm kind of more in the camp of I don't know if the fighting could be quelled so easily. But I would like to return to this later on because this is a super long discussion and it's a great argument over what happened at the Tower of Joy. Let me see. We're actually getting kind of close to the end of the questions here, so maybe we can even blow through all of them before the end of the stream. Okay.
Because it's 12:30 here.
Equally divisive one. Equally divisive one that Company of the Cat will love is Quaithe Shira Seastar.
No. Yeah. Have a look at her eyes. They don't say if they are different colored eyes. So no, he's not.
Yeah,
he's not.
I also don't think Quaithe is Shira Seastar. I'm kind of not in that boat. People think Mel is Shira Seastar, which glamored, which I'm like more fun, but also not in that boat. But your guys' thoughts? What do you think?
I'm not, because we have her thoughts, and she thinks of herself as Melody.
Yeah, exactly. She's like Melody Lot 7 and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, like it would appear that Mel is her own person. So yeah, I kind of am on that train too. What about you, Arthurian? Do you have a thoughts on Shira Seastar and Quaithe in general, or do you have a thought on the Shira Seastar Quaithe theory?
I don't really like it. I don't think anything's wrong with it. I wouldn't argue too strong. Well, I mean, but part of it is one, like we sort of already said, if all you can see are the eyes, and having really cool eyes would probably have come up by now. But also just why? How? If Quaithe is Shira Seastar, how does that affect the story?
Yeah,
what does
that do?
Changes, other than making the story more complicated? What is the point of this?
Yeah. So our take, I guess, collectively is no, not a good one. And then I definitely agree with that exact same premise we were talking about before. It doesn't do anything for the story. It's this needless weird thing that doesn't make any sense, or maybe it makes some sense but not enough to be included.
like most hidden identity theories.
Yeah. So here's a dragon one. Who will ride Viserion and Rhaego? If they will be ridden. That's the question. Who will ride them? And then and my secondary question is if they're ridden.
I don't know if all of them will have a rider. I do know if someone wants to mess up with Plum, Viserion would be pissed.
No, I kind of agree with you, Captain the Cat. I'm kind of on that train too of like I don't know if all the dragons are gonna get a rider. Everyone's always like, oh, this person's gonna ride that one, and then they're gonna die. Another person's gonna ride them, and I'm like, maybe not. Like we know about dragons that never have riders. Like in theory, it happens. Or at least don't have riders for the majority of their lives. That just are kind of off just being dragons. So I who's gonna tame these fuckers? I don't know. Tyrion.
I think
Tyrion's a fun one.
I do kind of enjoy those theories, but my question is that like it has to be part of a more complex theory to make sense.
Yeah.
So like if we go with like some of the Quentin theories that Quentin is trying to steal a dragon, I think you need a theory like that to go with dragon rider theories because like Daenerys has used her dragons before, and she just rides one, just sort of gives commands to the other, lets them do their thing. Like, unless somebody's stealing a dragon, I don't think, okay, Tyrion is theoretically a dragon rider. Like, how does that happen? Does Dany just walk home to be like, hey, these dragons I'm super protective of. You want to have one?
Yeah.
It can be cool.
Yeah. No, I also like the idea. I like the idea that
Dany gives a dragon.
Yeah, I like the idea that whoever else rides the dragons, that's going to have to be theft. They're going to have to steal the dragon from her in order to ride it. I do not think Jon's going to ride a dragon. That's my hot take of the day. Jon has Ghost. He's not going to ride a dragon, bruh. Like, just leave it alone.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. I don't think Jon is going to ride a dragon.
Jon ain't riding no fucking dragon. That's D&D. That's all D&D. But I like the idea of a dragon falling into someone's hands that we have that we actually expect not to have a dragon fall into the hands of. I'm a big fan of Victarion Dragon Rider. Because that's my boy. That's my boy, Victeezy. And I just want to see Victarion ride the dragon. Like so my dream, I mentioned this before. I think I mentioned this to Company the Cat. My dream is for Euron to get beaten to death by Victarion, and it's just like all them chickens. All those chickens you just forgot about years and years and years ago come home to roost in the weirdest way possible, the one you never expected. You thought those chickens would come home in every other way.
I think that Victarion will be a Kingslayer. It makes sense. His whole arc is that he didn't kill him because he didn't want to become a Kingslayer. So he's gonna become a Kingslayer.
And so I kind of like the idea of Euron gets a hold of one of the dragons. Dany's on a dragon. Dragons are causing havoc. And Euron's like, look at me, I'm so cool. And then parallel to Daemon and Aemond killing each other over the God's Eye, where Victarion jumps from one dragon, grabs Euron by the face, and just beats him to a pulp until they hit the ground and we just don't know what happened.
I'm sorry, but this is so funny to imagine because it's Victarion.
It would be wonderful. I think that would be the ultimate Victarion. Like, I'm not a Victarion apologist, but I'm a Victarion stan.
Yeah,
as contradictory as those two things sound.
No, he's very much a bad person, but oh my god, I enjoy his character.
Yeah, but he's very much a bad person, but he's also like absolutely 100% my boy. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. we don't condone, but we still stand.
That is little war criminal. We love him though.
So what about Arthurian? Do you have any predictions for Dragon Riders, or do you just because I do like your idea that it's going to be a theft, that in order for that she's not going to gift a dragon. I'm on board with that, and I'm opposed to the idea that Jon Snow gets given one, like partially for all of those above reasons.
I can't think of any off the top of my head. I kind of like the idea of Jon, but if it's like Dark Jon coming back, Like, I don't think it'll
okay.
be like the show where it's
Normal
Jon
Jon.
gets a dragon and they go off into the sunset and happy weird incest couple. But if Jon comes back and again he's more dark, vengeful Jon, and particularly we have all of those theories that I think the new show sort of highlights that like the relationship between a skin changer and their animal is the same as a dragon rider and their dragon. And I think I've talked about this before, I think in one of your discords at one point, that like we have this idea that, a dragon can't be stolen. They bond with one person for life. But if it's the same way that skin changing works, we know it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's like training a horse to a saddle. If it's once they get that bond, it's easier for somebody else to take it. So I sort of like an idea of Dark Jon using skin changer powers, just steal a dragon.
That is fun.
I'm not 100% sure how okay the dragons and Ghost would be with Jon after the resurrection, though, because Summer didn't like cold hands.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if Jon would have to do what Varamir does to the Shadowcat and force Ghost and the dragon to bend to his will, and if they both would not want to be under his control.
He's not gonna die completely. Actually, I think we will have a weird spirit combination between Ghost and Jon, because the skin changers, when they die, they don't go wherever normal people go. They go back into their animals.
Yeah, they shoot back into their
they're gonna snatch Jon back, but there is a possibility they're gonna snatch a little bit of Ghost too.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think that and this I think I believe it to a lesser extent than a lot of people think, but I think that Jon's not going to live in Ghost for that long, number one. But I do think when they pull him back, he's going to have a little more wolf in him than before. That may actually make his telepathic bond with Ghost stronger. Pulling a piece of Ghost into him might make their telepathy bond stronger.
Also, for him and for Rickon, but specifically with Jon, we see it very, very often because we see him more. It seems like Ghost is also skin changed into Jon, not only Jon and Ghost. We have times when, especially when Jon is mad, he's blacked out. He doesn't remember shit.
Yeah. And yeah, no, it's almost like Ghost is working him.
And when they found him, it was Ghost reaching out to him. They couldn't hear him. He didn't make any sound. He was like, "Oh, can you hear him?"
Yes, I mentioned it in the earlier part of the chat. Jesse Bear Book Club had a really good video about how the Dragon Bond goes both ways, and it's basically she's saying the exact same thing you're saying, and that it's a fundamental nature of bonding. That both sides are working each other to a degree, which is why I said I think that it may make Jon's bond to go stronger, and like that he may bring more of a piece of Ghost into himself than warging people usually bring into themselves.
That, and also we have the this weird parallel with the wolves and the children of the forest, where they are saying that all of them have gold eyes, but some of them have very green eyes and red eyes, and they are the ones that are green seers. And we have two wolves, Shaggy Dog and Ghost, and they are the two wolves that they have the most influence in their humans. So Summer is not as involved with Bran. Bran is skin changing into Summer, but Ghost and Shaggy, they do have influence on what Rickon and Jon are doing.
Yeah, no, Rickon especially seems to be influenced by Shaggy Dog. Like Shaggy Dog almost seems to scare him with the influence that Shaggy Dog exerts. Like, he's like afraid of Shaggy at first.
Yeah, because he's a baby too. Like, he doesn't have that much of control.
So another question surrounding dragons. There's a question here: will there be a fourth dragon entering the story from perhaps one of the unmentioned eggs? Do you guys think that any other dragons? I don't think so personally. I think that
I don't think so, because let's say that it will hatch, and then what? They will have a baby dragon.
Yeah, so like maybe dragons, maybe there's a baby dragon in A Dream of Spring or whatever. But yeah, it wouldn't affect the story anyway. So I'd be surprised if it. The one of the options is here. What if Euron's egg transforms and hatches into a dragon squid monster? And I'm like, as Cthulhu batshit crazy as that would be, I'd love it, but I don't know if that's where the story's heading.
I'm not a fan of that we have gods and shit like that. And this Cthulhu thing, for me, it's more of a reference than a real thing.
Yeah,
don't
I
think
tend
we
to
would
agree.
have, like-
I don't think any of the gods are real. I think Euron is really trying to become a god, but I don't think that like
Yeah.
R'hllor is actually
They are
a
not
thing.
real, but Euron says it all the time. They are not real, and nobody's gonna save you. But when they see me, they pray.
So there's one here about Corrin that I asked last stream, I believe. So let me skip a little further. Oh, okay. Here's a Euron one actually. So do you think Euron will be the big bad, like of the whole series? And I'm like, I don't know if this series has a big bad. I think there's many bads.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What about you, Arthurian?
I think that he's.
Oh, sorry, you were saying something, Kat?
Say, Arthurian. I don't have a problem.
I think he would be a big bad. So I think, so the way I would put it is, so if we go back to like that original 3-book draft structure, which I know is highly questionable if we should because so much has changed. But you know, if we imagine that, you know, you have the War of the Five Kings, the Targaryen invasion, and then the fight with the others. I imagine he is like our Act 2 like mini boss. Like he would be the big bad for what would theoretically be that book 2. Is he'll be, you know, the boss we fight before we go deal with the others. He's sort of the human big bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that kind of makes, yeah. I can see him being a big bad, just not like the big bad. Like he is a big baddie. He's a force that needs to be stopped to a degree, you know.
And I think he works really well as that, like as a sort of not the big bad, but a big bad. Because again, like if we go at the earlier books, you know, the magic was a lot less pronounced, and it's all, you know, there's a lot more politics and everything. And I think Euron is like the perfect in the middle, like transition between political situations and, you know, magical situations in terms of getting from a War of the Five Kings to a long night. He's like a good transition of, you know, our halfway between people and not people opponents.
Okay, yeah, no, that's an interesting one.
That also, I don't think that they will need to defeat him. I think Euron is building on his own downfall right now. I think that he's playing with stuff that he doesn't understand, and it would be his downfall. It's, yeah, because this is the Lovecraft reference, in my opinion, that he's completely and utterly different guy in our story, and Nyarlathotep is playing with him. He thinks that he's the big bad guy and God and the most powerful, but he's not that important. He's a human after all.
Yeah, but he's not actually all that. No, I like that interpretation because I also feel the same. But I don't think that Euron is going to attain a godly level of power. I think that he has bigger dreams than his britches are capable of holding. With that, I think we're actually going to probably wrap up the stream here because it's been almost 3 hours. Like, holy shit, it's been like 3 hours. So, any final comments that you guys want to drop on anything we talked about? Or if you want to rep your channels and let people know where they can find you here on the YouTubes, that would also be super cool.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. In any order. I'll let you guys fight a battle to the death over it.
Great, I'm quicker. I won. You can find me at Company of the Cat. That, and I have an Instagram too if you want to see my dog. This is what I post only. My dog and my cat.
Oh, so if you like pet pictures, also you can follow Company of the Cat on Instagram.
He's amazing. He's sleeping with his tongue out all the time. Make sure to see him. He's great.
Yeah, your dog is very cute. I've seen your dog in the Discord. Your dog is adorable.
I know. He's so cute.
And Arthurian, where can people find you here on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm Arthurian Historian. You know, just those 2 words. And you can find me on YouTube and the same name on TikTok. I do a lot of historical content, and every once in a while, when I can think of a fun theory, I try to use that to sort of come up with more historically grounded A Song of Ice and Fire content. So if that sounds like something you would like, you should look me up. Every once in a while, I remember to make an upload.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me on the stream and answering some of these questions and providing good discussion. That's kind of one of my favorite things about doing this. Like, we had so much just fun, random viewpoint talk on the last stream, and I was like, oh shit, that's just a lot of fun. So I had a good time with you guys just analyzing all the different angles. And hopefully we'll stream again at some point in the future. So thank you, chat, too. Anybody who was here checking us out, throughout the course of this stream, thank you guys for coming and hanging out and listening to the rambling and asking questions and all that sort of shit. Streaming is a little scary for me, to be honest. I was like, this is terrifying, and then this has actually been a lot of fun. So, so I had a good time. but yeah, thanks everybody, and then we will catch you on the next stream.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was a great time. Thanks for bringing us on.
I'm sorry, but I'm